Okay, well, hello, everybody. Nice to see you. It's 6 p.m., so we're going to get started here with our City of Encinitas regular City Council meeting. So it's Wednesday, December 15, 2021, and this is the regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council. May we please have a roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Kranz?
Here.
Councilmember Hinsey?
Here.
Councilmember Lyons?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Mosca?
Here.
Mayor Blakespear?
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present this evening.
Okay, great. Thank you. I invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I think we should take public comment first, and then we'll go to the presentation of the Equity Committee. So let's go ahead and take public comment.
Okay, we have actually five. First speaker is Tom Straw, followed by Sabrina Musk, then Geraldine Kessler. And a reminder that you each have 3 minutes.
Is it okay to take the mask off? I guess you can hear me fine, can you? Good evening. My name is Tom Straw, and I'm a resident of Cardiff. I will read my comments to keep this efficient. The topic that brings me here this evening, I would like the City Council to address, is the proliferation of e-bikes amongst our area student population and the hazards these young e-bike operators pose to the drivers of San Diego County. I encountered an e-biker in the dark and dense fog at 6 a.m. on December 3rd. I was turning north onto Saxony from Encinitas Boulevard on my way to the Ecce Y. This e-biker, who appeared to be around 12 years old, had no lights nor reflective gear. When I pulled up next to him with my passenger window down to get his attention, he had to tap his earbuds to hear me. These kids are riding to school in the sunrise and leaving school campuses in packs scattering in all directions when the bells ring. They drop their bikes everywhere around grocery stores and fast food parking lots. They ride in bike lanes against traffic and other cyclists. Often they have passengers hanging off the back. It is common to see passengers larger than the operator, leaving a strength and weight imbalance between them for safe operations. They bounce from curbs to gutters, commercial driveway cuts, while often jousting with each other in the process. I see them riding without hands on the bars, instead playing with their phones, with very few having helmets tightly secured. I'm a part-time Instacart shopper, delivery driver, and on the surface roads roughly 6 hours in the middle of the day. I guess the questions I have: does the City of Encinitas, San Diego County, and/or the sister cities of this county have plans underway for regulating, licensing, offering certification courses with school districts, and the creation of enforcement of e-bike specific traffic laws? And what legal responsibility and culpability do the parents of these e-bikers have when accidents occur? And then what insurance policy the parents covers injury and harm caused by their child's actions on the e-bikes to the injured parties? Thank you.
I did want to say that the City of Encinitas takes this issue very serious, and that we have been addressing it through infrastructure improvements, through education, working with the school districts and with the city and county. And we've also been working with our law enforcement to make sure that people are riding their bikes safely. The other issues in terms of regulations are something that can be also pursued through the state of California. They're more state law issues.
Well, we don't have this on the agenda, but I would say that we should, as a city, be doing more. And so I know that we're doing a lot, but there's, in terms of awareness, we should be figuring out how we can raise and elevate this issue, because it is, I've seen a lot of what he describes.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Next speaker is Sabrina Musk, followed by Geraldine Kessler, then Mark Wilcox.
Hi. This is my first time at a council meeting, so I did not come as prepared as I should, but I would like to play 2 quick videos and then show you some images. I don't know if this is council related. I know that I've been in communication with Councilmember Heinze's office. This is what happens at my property every time it rains. If you can play it real quick, yeah. There's this video. It is a full-on river that flows from my backyard neighbor's property onto mine. It has caused a full flood in my house a year and a half ago, causing over $8,000 worth of damage. Insurance did not cover anything. I had just renovated the place 10 months earlier. There's another video also showing on the other side of this, that one right before that, showing that's the side. It is very clear that that neighbor has opened up a spot of that small retainer wall, opening up all the water to flow. Yesterday, it was about 3 inches from the house itself. There's at least 30 feet from the fence to my house. I don't know what to do anymore. I have been in communication with code enforcement for 1.5 years. I'm a small business owner. The financial burden, my whole house was destroyed at the start of COVID. I had nowhere to go. I had to deal with different contractors in and out, so that was a health hazard. The neighbor, the landlord, will not, I have tried mediation, she ignores them. Code enforcement says there's nothing they can do. If I was her and I was doing that to someone else's property, I would expect that I would be held accountable. I don't know how there's no code enforcement. The amount of water that floods onto my property from someone else's, which also, if this is the fence and this is her house and that's mine, there's about 4 feet of mud. So all that mud goes all over the patio. I spent 4 hours today just cleaning it up. I don't know what else to do, so I'm here. Everyone suggested, and it just randomly happened to be a council meeting tonight when I called this morning. I don't know if there's some kind of change. I'm probably, 36 seconds. Can you also show the photos real quick? That's what my backyard looks like every time it has a heavy rain, all because of my neighbor. And then another one. That's a lot of all that water drains over. She has zero. I say that her drainage system is my backyard. My neighbors also that to the right and left of me, I get along with them very well. And they are kind of like, they're like, I would go nuts if this was happening in my property. And then couple more photos. This is over $5,000 just in drainage that I added. 6-inch PVC pipe up and down the entire length of the property. Nothing helped. It still flooded everywhere yesterday. Every time it rains, I am paranoid that it's going to flood into the house, and I don't know what to do. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was inside the house 1.5 years ago. It just took over the whole house.
Geraldine?
I'm sorry for that.
Sorry.
That's a nightmare. I would like to speak today about the environmental nightmare Staver housing project on Melba Road in Encinitas that is slated for 31 homes on 6.6 acres and to take down a grove of mature Torrey pines in addition to 173 other trees, 30 other smaller trees and native shrubs, and demo a beautiful historical home built in 1938, all based on the ill-advised density bonus law AB 2345, with potential backing from SB 9 and 10, the ugly stepsisters. While scouring the onslaught of paperwork from the city and county records for the Staver Environmental Nightmare Project, I found that not only was Anton Van Amerhorst asking for an easement on the property, but he was also the prior owner of the Staver property. This gentleman was also the owner of what is known today as the Botanical Gardens, the original owner of the Larrabee's house. During his years in Encinitas, Anton became a major landowner with a claim to at least 16 different properties in the general area, one of which was as large as 80 acres. He became a well-recognized avocado rancher listed in the 1928 Avocado Growers Report that mentions he planted 11 acres of avocados in Encinitas in 1919. He was a director of the Encinitas Water District, which later became San Diego Irrigation District, and he held this position for a number of years. During his stewardship, he demonstrated the expertise necessary to successfully plant and establish a number of species, in addition to the avocados. This fact and many more that I am unable to share due to time restraints should be noted. The Staver property has historical significance to the city of Encinitas. It should be taken into consideration for any type of development on the property. At the very least, California historical preservation guidelines should be considered, especially the fact that the beautiful historical home built in 1938 could have been Anton's, who was a key figure in the development of the world-renowned botanical gardens. Based on aerial photography, we think that some of the trees planted are still present on bordering property, and this is a very exciting findings for our neighborhood. Please work with our community in acquiring this property from the Staver Trust with soft infrastructure funding and community funding before you destroy this piece of sacred Encinitas heritage. This is what legacies are made of. Don't pass up on this opportunity for you and the citizens of Encinitas. Thank you for listening. And just here's a little picture of it, if you don't know what it is.
Next speaker is Mark Wilcox, followed by Nancy Perry Sheridan, and then Peggy Walker.
If I may interject just briefly for the last speaker, ma'am, this is Leslie Devaney, the city attorney. I wanted to just let you know that this project is a very important project to the city. I know that as far as the consideration, it's making its way through the process. This council is not allowed to comment, and so they're not ignoring you. They're just not allowed to comment on it because this body is an appellate body, so it's making its way through the process. So I know everybody's listening. They also are Brown Act regulations, but I wanted you to know that.
I just wanted to mention, I keep finding new things like every day, and so I just feel like that was kind of important. That's why.
Sure, and you have the ability to provide that to city staff. It's just that this body can't interact with you on that. So I just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mark Wilcox here. I'm a father, grandfather, and advocate for youth. I attended the City Marijuana Workshop on December 1st. Of particular concern to residents in attendance were the procedures for filing complaints regarding marijuana businesses. There was a comment from a parent regarding the inaction of the California Department of Cannabis Control to her complaints regarding a local marijuana business that was delivering marijuana to underage persons. The marijuana businesses at the marijuana workshop were quick to demur that the Department of Cannabis Control would come and take action, and their businesses had experienced that action. However, yesterday, the Department of Cannabis Control provided a biannual report to the state via a Zoom public meeting. The Department of Cannabis Control indicated that there had been no enforcement actions by their department against permitted marijuana businesses, nor did they have any plans to do that, which leaves the enforcement entirely in the city's hands. Residents heard that after a citizen complaint was filed with the city, staff will send a letter to marijuana businesses regarding the needed corrective action. However, staff did not provide a timeline of how long there would be between the complaint filing and the city's letter. The staff specified that if the marijuana business does not change in 2 weeks, there would be next steps. Staff did not indicate just what these next steps would be if the marijuana business does not change. Conceivably, 3 or more weeks could pass while the behavior of the marijuana business was damaging to residents or to personal property or to public property. The staff indicated there would be more answers in the frequently asked questions section to be available on the city's website. The FAQ is there. The answers to the enforcement timeline and procedures are not. I would like to respectfully suggest the information regarding the citizen complaint process and the expected enforcement timeline and response be added to the FAQ section. Right now, the FAQs contains a lot of useful information for marijuana business applicants. Certainly, citizens deserve to have equal treatment and consideration on this critical issue. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Nancy Perry Sheridan. I live in Cardiff. I work as a social worker with San Diego Alliance, where I direct several youth programs. Oh, this is okay. Thank you. One of these is the Start Smart Driving Safety Program at San Diego Academy, one of the 5 district high schools. The focus of the Start Smart program is to prevent distracted, drunk, and drug-impaired driving by teens. Marijuana use rates keep rising among current users, even during the pandemic, according to a recently published national survey. I'm here because I want you to add marijuana to the flavored tobacco ban in our municipal code. We know that drunk and drug-impaired driving has significantly increased this year, according to the County District Attorney Office. District Attorney Summer Steffens said, quote, "It seems more than ever citizens are being reckless and putting lives at risk by drinking, using drugs, and then getting behind the wheel." End quote. I feel that our city can play an important role to reduce impaired driving and marijuana use by young people by banning the sale of flavored marijuana products, as the council has for flavored tobacco products. Look, there is even a statewide campaign called Flavors Hook Kids, which recognizes that flavors are driving the marijuana and tobacco youth marketplace. Both tobacco and marijuana mega corporations exploit teens' attractions to fruit and candy-like flavored tobacco and marijuana products, precisely because the flavors mask their harshness. As a youth advocate for many years, I know about teen marijuana use and the associated problems that shortchange this most vulnerable population. I know and I see the unintended consequences from teen marijuana use that I hope you never witness. It's because of these experiences that I keep showing up and appealing to you once again. Please limit the appeal of flavored marijuana products, vapes, and edibles. Now is the time before marijuana storefronts open in Encinitas. Please add marijuana to the flavored tobacco ban in our municipal code. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. And Mayor, thank you for letting public comment go first. That was very generous. I'm Peggy Walker, and I'm a youth advocate. I came tonight because I attended a State Department of Cannabis Control annual report Zoom meeting Monday, and I wanted to share some interesting but disappointing results. Bottom line, the DCC made it clear that, in part due to COVID, that this past year they really have not been conducting oversight and enforcement. And this is unfortunate because it places a huge burden on municipalities like ours who want to protect public health. Most cities do not have the wherewithal, the background information, the guidelines, the information regarding state regulatory loopholes to really have oversight of product quality and retail activities to protect public health. Let me give you an example. One man spoke at this meeting. He is a testing lab operator in San Diego, and he said he has asked repeatedly for stricter regulations over testing because products contaminated with pesticide are getting into the marketplace. The industry tells us over and over again our products are safe, they're tested. But this testing lab operator has testified to the contrary. Other areas said to lack adequate regulation included potency manipulation and labeling that fails to address health warnings such as contraindications with prescription drugs or risk of psychosis with THC content over 10%. And this is a medical doctor's explanation, not mine, THC potency over 10%. Because California allows extremely high potency products are pushed at dispensaries, and customers often don't have a choice except for high potency products. And one doctor attending this meeting said that it is reprehensible that the state has not addressed this issue, but that local governments can do so. With this in mind, with this lax regulation, I wanted to share that Encinitas could follow the lead of other municipalities that have enacted policies to counteract these lax regulations, including bans on discounting. Ran out of time, but there are steps we can take, and I want you to be aware that we need to be vigilant. Thank you.
That does conclude oral communications.
Okay, thank you to the members of the public who came to speak. And just as a reminder, the way the public meetings work is that council can't engage on the topic that you brought up because it's not agendized. So agendized means that the public has notice that we would be talking about it so that they could come and speak on it too. So at public comment, we listen to you, but we don't engage in a back and forth or discuss among ourselves, just so that you're aware of why it might seem that we're not responsive. We are listening. So thank you for your comments, and we will now go to our special presentation today, which is just a short update on the status of the Encinitas Equity Committee, because Councilmember Hinsey and I wanted to share with the council and the public what's happening at the Equity Committee. So just briefly, we formed it in May of 2021, and we have a consultant who we have hired to help us, who is great. I think they're doing a great job. We've had 8 meetings. We had our 8th meeting in November, and we have identified 3 key priority areas for the Equity Committee. The first is housing, the second is public safety, and the third is community engagement. We've had a few different guest presenters, like, for example, Captain Taft, Deputy Fire Chief Ford, Jennifer Gates, our planning manager, Roy Sapow, Christian Gutierrez, housing services manager. And then in January, so in the next month, we'll be having a joint workshop about the sheriff's contract, where we'll be inviting the Equity Committee members to participate as well, so that we could have questions from the Equity Committee and or statements or policy suggestions together with the City Council, so that we can all be having that dialogue at the same time. So there are several areas under housing, public safety, and community engagement, and we're still working through some possible recommendations to the council. I think this committee, like many committees, runs into that place where a lot of things have been stated as aspirational goals, but the committee doesn't have staff, the council hasn't approved policy changes or debated things, and so figuring out what exactly to recommend to council to help achieve greater diversity, equity, inclusion in the city is something that we're working on right now. So we're not really ready to present a recommendation or suggestions to the council, but we are working through that. And as I've said, we've had 8 meetings. So I'd like to ask Councilmember Hinsey to add other things she'd like to add.
Thank you. So yeah, those were the nuts and bolts. Just as a reminder, there are 10 members of that community. The mayor and I make up 2 of those members, and what's been so useful for us to learn about is that most of the other participants are highly engaged in the nonprofit sector, or they bring expertise to this group in the areas of homelessness or experiences that are unique to the members of our community who are people of color. And so we're really able to tackle a lot of really in-depth issues with these folks who are deep thinkers. So, and then on the other side, fortunately, our city staff has been available to educate members of the committee how things work. And so I think the 2 areas that we're really narrowing in on are, as the mayor highlighted, was housing, because we're on the verge here in our city of having this updated housing element and having to conduct a lot of studies to show what our makeup of our city is like, how we might be excluding folks from housing opportunities in the city. And so what this committee would like to do is just to engage more deeply within those studies, drawing from members of their groups and their nonprofits to be able to provide testimony as to what it's like to be homeless in Encinitas, or what it's like to be housing insecure, so that we can fill in the picture, because I think right now it's hard for us to know who exactly these individuals are who will be living in our low-income housing once it's constructed. And then the other main topic of interest for this group is the public safety area. And so we've had presentations from Captain Taft. Perhaps we'll have Captain Wells come next, but to understand what the county's mobile crisis response teams are doing here in our county, how we can best leverage that service as a city, and then where are the missing gaps. So, this year we added a housing services manager to our city staff, and how can this committee engage with that service, get the word out about all the things that we're doing well, and encourage our residents to, maybe call a different number when they see somebody experiencing homelessness or in need of psychiatric support. So we figured that would be a good time to bring the committee in with the rest of council in January to discuss what services are available, what our sheriff contract actually provides us now, and how we as a city can better coordinate those resources so they're working best for our residents.
So is there any public speaker on this? And it was agendized.
No, there is not.
No? Okay. Does anybody on the council want to? Yes, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So it sounds like January, it sounds like there are a few different areas that you're looking at. One is public safety. And so January, we're likely to hear from some members of the Equity Committee when we're discussing the sheriff's contract. Do you have an idea of when we would see any kind of proposals on the housing and the community engagement come before the city council?
I mean, I think we had wanted to come back to the council within a year. So we started it in March, and we wanted to get back to you and the community with something. So I would say by March is the goal. And I think they're focusing us in on that. So there's a good sense of that being needed. There are people who would like this to continue indefinitely as a committee, and I think thinking about like what its actual work plan would be and how that would work, to me that path is not clear. I think there's been a lot of value in having it, and I want us to make recommendations to council, but I'm not exactly sure about that next step of indefinite committee.
Well, I mean, it's certainly the more structural the proposals are, the more long-lasting the effect can be. And I think March is really a good timeline in terms of our strategic planning. If we have a strategic planning session, if there are things that need a little bit more time to kind of be put together, that would be a perfect place to kind of, we can discuss it here and then even kind of bring it up at the strategic planning session to kind of have movement on it over a year period of time or even longer. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add to that part of the discussion has been the fact that our boards and commissions do so much. They function as an important part of our city, making recommendations to the council. And so if the equity committee is going to end, how can we kind of make sure that equity is part of every one of our boards and commissions that we have? So what recommendations can we put in place so that our boards and commissions are taking on that role and functioning in a more equitable way?
I have always thought that there would be a place in our governance system for a commission that was focused on issues related to public health. And I could see how public health, homelessness, and some of these other housing issues in a group that was formalized, not with council member participation, but as a venue for the community to raise issues and to work on possible solutions would be useful. I know that we have seated a working group as part of our homeless action plan, and so maybe as these things kind of work their way through, there's a way that we could get around to that. But especially with regard to public health and mental health and some of the issues that we see with regard to homelessness, I think that there have been some people who have stepped up to focus on quite a bit. And so that's an area that I think that it might be possible to end up with a permanent committee or commission.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and we actually discussed that topic. And so one of our committee members, Allison Blackwell, she raised her hand to serve on the Housing and Homelessness Working Group. And so part of this goal of the Equity Committee is to cross-pollinate between efforts that are already underway. And so that's a great suggestion, and we were really glad that we were able to engage with that working group.
Okay, great. Yes, Councilmember Lyons?
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of maybe ask a question, or maybe it's more of a comment, but I would benefit as you go along to, if you, out of this process, can identify specifically what the issues are in our community. I think a lot of us come to the dialogue on equity and we have our own thoughts about what we believe might be the condition, but perhaps we don't have a lot of detail or data. And then maybe what we know or what we think we know isn't specific to what's happening here in Encinitas. Maybe it's something that's happening nearby, but I don't know if you have the bandwidth to, within this period of time, this initial step, to articulate those issues that you're finding are specific to Encinitas. But if you do, I think that would be really informative. And I suspect, too, that when you identify the issues, you start to lean towards understanding and identifying what those barriers are, and then that leads to solutions. So it's just kind of a linear process that I think would be helpful for us to start by understanding what are our issues. And then you'll probably learn a lot of things that are a little bit outside of the box, and so, or outside of your box that you're creating with this first phase of the Equity Committee, but are really important. So I think it'd be really valuable to kind of park those and identify them, and then create next steps so that as you continue on in the process of evolving the Equity Committee, you kind of shine a light on things as you go along. And I say some of this because some of what we'll identify, I think, will be outside of what would be traditionally something we can help solve as a city entity. For instance, I know I brought up recently to you, Councilmember Hinsey, the idea of access to financing for housing as a thing that might be identified. Is that a barrier? Are we seeing that a barrier that falls into this category of equity? Now, that may be something we identify, and I think it's important to capture it. It may not. We may decide there's things we can do about it. We may decide there aren't things we can do about it, but we can be kind of a central point for coalescing all the information. So I guess that was a comment, not a question.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move on to our report from closed session.
Thank you, Your Honor, and council and members of the public. I'm first going to report out on the closed session, the special closed session that happened on Monday, December 13th. There were two items that the council took up. One was conference with labor negotiator regarding the firefighters to hear from the negotiators and also give direction to the negotiators. There are no reportable actions that came out of that item. The other one was employee appointment for city attorney, where the council considered RFQ responses for city attorney, and there were no reportable actions coming out of that. Today's closed session was only one item, and it was city manager performance review, and there were no reportable actions coming out of that item. In both closed sessions, all members were present, and there were no conflicts. And that concludes my report out from closed sessions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Mayor, I did hand out corrections to item 8B, which was the Exhibit A to the resolution, the 2022 regular city council meeting schedule. There was just one meeting cancellation that had been left off of the attachment, so that's been corrected, and that was for June 8th. Otherwise, the rest of the cancellations were correct, and that was the only correction to the agenda. And then moving to the consent calendar, item 8D has been removed by a member of the public, and then the mayor had indicated she wanted to remove item 8I.
Yes, okay, great. Let's move to item 8D. This is,
We need a motion on the remainder of the.
yes, I'd entertain a
I'll move
motion.
the remainder of the calendar. And I did just want to make a comment on one of the items. I don't want to pull it, but I did want to make mention of the fact that 8K is the award of construction contract for Trail 95. Trail 95 project is the long-awaited trail along El Camino del Norte in the community of Olivenhain. This is something that has been planned for a while, so we finally have the alignment of the stars here. We have the funding We have the design done, and now we've gotten bids on it, and so we're at that point of awarding it, and I'm very excited about this, and I think this is a really special moment, and I look forward to the cutting of the ribbon on this trail, because it really does close an important gap in the system in Alevinheim. So happy to make this motion.
I'll second that.
And I would like to comment on a couple of these items. We're getting engaged quite extensively with the San Diego Community Power Group, which is great. I would like to take this opportunity to ask that this issue of net metering be brought back so that we have a better understanding of what San Diego Community Power's position is with regard to net metering. So I look forward to a presentation there. My understanding is that there might be an opportunity for the city to engage the CPUC and express our opinion about the changes that are being proposed. And so I would hope that we could all get better informed about what's going on and how it would affect our community choice energy group.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Does that, City Manager? And we can get a report back on that, net metering. Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 8D, and we do have a number of speakers. First speaker is Kathy Owani, followed by Melina Meza, and then Bart Ziegler.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I am Kathy Iwane. I am working with the Coalition for Nuclear Safety, and we represent about 30,000 people in Southern California. I'm also a board member of Del Mar-based Samuel Lawrence Foundation. I'd like to thank the commission as well as the council, as well as Mayor Blakespear for bringing item 8D to the consent calendar, and also my gratitude to Chair Novi for his work on this with the Environmental Commission. So what we're dealing with here is something that is very, very common sense. As a parent, we want to protect our coastal resources. We also want to protect our future generations. And what we're looking at is the largest nuclear waste dump in the United States. 1,800 tons, 3.6 million pounds of nuclear waste is buried on the beach at San Onofre, where kids and surfers and families recreate daily. Unfortunately, Southern Cal Edison has chosen 5/8 of an inch thin-walled canisters not meant for long-term storage. They are only warranted for up to 20 years maximum. Unfortunately, we have climate change dictating rising seas in a salty marine layer environment, which is known to bring on stress-induced corrosion. We also have a utility that has purported to be able to repair the canisters with a spray paint method. The one thing that they will not discuss publicly are outlier events. Outlier events are earthquake, tsunami, terrorism, etc. When such an event like this happens, it's very important that the utility has a viable repair mechanism on site. Unfortunately, this is not the case. So I'm very concerned about this, and I'm here to represent a lot of people in order that this resolution for public safety be voted on. Finally, we know that Samuel Lawrence Foundation sued the California Coastal Commission for letting the utility plant build this dump on the beach. And the reason we sued is to reserve the spent fuel pools. We lost. And so one of the last remaining efforts in order to have a way to deal with a damaged canister was taken from us. So it is very, very important that we look at exactly what your resolution calls for. It calls for the best monitoring available at UCSD. This is known to be the very first detection of the Fukushima radiation. So Thank you very much for your support, and let's pass this. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now. We are here to express our strong support for the Environmental Commission's recommendation that you consider joining our bipartisan coalition as a supporting member. We believe joining our growing membership is the best way for the city to support congressional efforts to open a consent-based permanent national repository for the disposal of the nation's nuclear waste. Becoming a supporting member does not obligate the city to any further action, but will help demonstrate strong local support on the issue. Although Songs was retired in, Although Songs was retired in 2013 and decommissioning work is currently underway, the spent fuel must be removed from our coastline to complete the decommissioning, restore the land, and return it to the Navy. The federal government was required by law to begin picking up and disposing of spent fuel back in 1998. We are still waiting for that to happen more than 2 decades later. However, an unprecedented window of opportunity appears to be opening at the federal level. The House and Senate passed appropriations bills with nearly $28 million in funding for 2022 activities related to spent fuel storage, including consent-based siting. In addition, the Department of Energy restarted the spent fuel program late last month, launching a process for consent-based sitting. Congressman Mike Levin also announced the formation of a bipartisan spent nuclear fuel caucus along with Congressman Rodney Davis of Illinois. These developments underscore the need for local stakeholders to speak with a unified voice and advocate on this important issue. We are now poised to play a meaningful role in future discussions regarding legislation and appropriations that allow for the removal of spent fuel from the San Diego County coastline. Voting to join AFSN will further enable us to work together to ensure spent fuel is ultimately removed from the coastline to the Songs decommissioning, so the Songs decommissioning can be completed and the site restored. We currently have the support of all 5 San Diego County supervisors and Mayor Todd Gloria. We urge you to join these leaders and others to support this important mission to joining AFSN as a supporting member. Thank you.
Next speaker is Bart Ziegler, followed by Manuel Camargo, and then Al Bates.
First of all, thank you very much, public service, because we all need it. And you guys are courageous, and you give your time and energy to look out for most of us. So that's really a big gratitude from everyone behind me, I'm certain. I'm Bart Ziegler. I represent Samuel Lawrence Foundation, and the co-founder and the president. I've got a PhD in community environmental medicine from UC, and I'm thrilled that Encinitas is engaged and interested in this resolution. I'm speaking after a coalition that Edison formed after we had our Coalition for Nuclear Safety. And it's great we have coalitions because people need to cooperate and collaborate. The coalition that Edison formed is really a long-term concern. They're not really the right effort, and I think they're more of a distraction to the immediate risks that my colleague presented, which is single can storage of this 6 million year most deadly poison on Earth, on the planet, that has the single cans have a 25-year warranty. So we're thrilled Encinitas is engaged, is interested. I think that so many people are nervous about this problem and want the city to pay close attention to it. So we're very in favor of the resolution. I think a lot of the reasons not to trust Southern California Edison is the history of mismanagement and the near disasters that have been made public, the ones that have been made public. Very in favor of the resolution, and the Samuel Lawrence Foundation has a whole host of experts, nuclear physicists, scientists, materials engineers, and we're able to help you at any time if you have any questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Manuel Camargo, and I am with Southern California Edison and Songs. I'm here to address item 8D in the resolution about the safety commissioning of songs. We appreciate the city's interest in songs decommissioning and the important roles of responsible third parties, as it's referred to in the resolution. I would say that there are some inaccuracies in the whereases portion of the resolution, but I'm going to focus on the actions at the bottom of the resolution, which we actually do support. The first item expresses support for real-time radiation monitoring of the spent fuel facility at Songs. And we do have a radiation monitoring system in place based on a recommendation from a member of the local community, although it's not an air monitoring system per se. Data in that system is streamed to 3 off-site agencies, including the California Department of Public Health, which also publishes monthly reports. The second is related to canister repair, and we do have an award-winning repair method that has been independently reviewed by the California Coastal Commission, and in particular a third-party expert retained by the Coastal Commission to perform the review. By the way, this is a sample of the 316 low-carbon stainless steel that is in the shell of each of our canisters. The third item addresses whether the need for a dry transfer facility has been made by a responsible party, and it has. That's been made by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The fourth is about relocating the spent fuel further inland into higher ground, which is covered by a 2019 coastal development permit from the Coastal Commission. The fifth item, my personal favorite, is about a national issue, and that is the federal government's responsibility to provide a repository for the nation's spent fuel. We share the Environmental Commission's interest in supporting congressional efforts to open a consent-based permanent repository for spent fuel. That's why back in March, SCE helped found an advocacy coalition called Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now, you heard about earlier tonight. That became more important this last week, December 1st, when the U.S. Department of Energy announced that it is restarting work on the federal spent fuel management program, and that is very good news. We have an opportunity to advocate for what is important to local stakeholders, including the city of Encinitas. Joining the coalition is a powerful way for the city to ensure its voice is heard as the DOE restarts its work on the spent fuel management program, and doing so is timely. Let me close by making the same invitation I made to the Environmental Commission, and that is I invite the council and staff to visit Songs and see for yourself how we are working safely to dismantle the site and to safely store the spent fuel as long as it remains on site. Thank you for your attention.
Final speaker is Al Bates.
Good evening, Mayor Blakespeare, Deputy Mayor Musk, and members of the City Council. I really appreciate being here tonight. So I'm a longtime resident of Encinitas. I've lived here for 40 years, so even before Encinitas was a city. I live in Cardiff. So I work for Southern California Edison, and I also, in that capacity, serve as the liaison to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, so I interface with the regulator all the time. I'm also a nuclear engineer, and I've held a senior reactor operator's license, so Yes. And I also hold a senior reactor operator's license, so I know the technology very well. So in my long time work with the NRC, I've come to appreciate the importance of independent regulatory oversight and a rigorous third-party review. That's our mainstay, really. I appreciate the city's reliance on responsible parties to validate things like whether or not a dry transfer facility for on-site spent fuel storage is necessary or not. I can tell you from a technical perspective, it's not. We have already demonstrated, and the NRC observed, a canister repair method. It's called metallic overlay, along with a team from a specialty engineering company called LPI, which was retained by the Coastal Commission. And all that is a matter of public record. So it's a very rigorous process, this metallic overlay. It's used in many other industries as a way for metallic repair. So as a result, we have this repair method on the shelf right now if we're ever to need a canister repair as we do our periodic canister inspections. So I will note, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what's inside a fuel canister. Well, it's one of these. Now, this is obviously a facsimile, but it's a fuel rod. There's about There's about 16 by 16 of these, so it's about a 10-inch square, and it's about 12 feet long. So it's a solid. And inside that solid are ceramic pellets. So inside here are ceramic pellets. So the notion that these things are going to escape from a canister is kind of fictitious. It doesn't happen. The facility that they're encased in is robust, 10 feet thick steel reinforced concrete. It's one of the most robust structures in California. It takes a lot of temperature to cause a problem with these, the type of temperatures that can't be found in nuclear fuel that's spent because it just doesn't have the heat content. So in terms of meltdowns or things like that we've heard in movies, that doesn't happen. So I can tell you also that there's no credible accidents or emergency accident levels, and the NRC has reviewed that. So there's nothing that can occur off-site to cause harm to the public. That's also a matter of public record. So I applaud the City Council for joining the Spent Fuel Coalition, and I look forward to working in that coalition to move the spent fuel. Thank you.
That does conclude
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you to the public speakers and the engagement on this topic for an item that was on consent. We really appreciate it. You know, I'm really happy about the work that the Samuel Lawrence Foundation is doing, and I spoke to the group and was impressed by the depth of engagement, and just want to recognize how many people are working really hard on this issue. I've also done a tour of songs just to follow up on that invitation. So it's important to see it firsthand. And I was happy that once I met with the Samuel Lawrence Foundation and started looking at what their asks were, that our Environmental Commission was working on something that was quite similar. And so speaking with Ari Novi on the Environmental Commission, who is the head of the Botanic Gardens here in our city of Encinitas, it was great to see how much alignment there was. So this resolution coming forward today, I think, is a really important opportunity for us to be on the record supporting this and looking for solutions and engaged in it as something that is a public safety concern for our residents, and is something that we should really be engaged about and know about and also take a position on. So I'm happy it's on the agenda. I'm also really happy to hear that nobody is really coming out in opposition to it. I mean, mostly even the industry people who came today, were essentially supportive of this, and I appreciate that. So I am going to move that we adopt this, but first I want to call on my colleagues, I think, who also want to make comments about this important item. So Councilmember Krantz.
I would second your motion and also thank the members of the public who spoke, as well as the commission for their efforts on this. My brother-in-law was an operator at Songs, and we talked a lot about what led to the closure, and I have to admit that, and he expressed kind of a comedy of errors that led to it in terms of trying to replace the rods and such. And so, the investor-owned utility model, I think sometimes is all about the bottom line, and maybe this is a great corporation, but I think that for the health of the region and the world, I think the steps that are being recommended are pretty prudent. So I'm happy to support this. It reminds me a little bit about that old Ronald Reagan slogan, trust but verify. And so I'm going to trust the corporation and that they're going to do the work that's necessary, and the NRC is going to be, overseeing the operation. But I think that a lot of what we're talking about here in this resolution is the verification part, that the public can have confidence that important work is being done. One last note, a bad habit of mine is to doom scroll on Twitter, and I recently came across video of the Fukushima tsunami, and were that to happen along our coast, I'm afraid the impacts on that on what remains of Songs and these storage casks would be devastating. And so I think it's prudent to take steps to get this off the coast. So as Yucca Mountains gets sorted out and other areas to get this waste stored as safely as possible, I think this is a prudent step. And I also would ask that, I assume that the city's evaluation of participation in the Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now Coalition would include an agenda item that would tell us what the costs, are there any costs to that? Or is adopting this resolution going to put us in that?
I don't think it puts us in it. I think we do need to evaluate that. I don't know if there are costs. I don't think so. But
it'll come back.
But, well, I don't know if it'll come back. I mean, we're asking staff to evaluate it. And so, you know, if it's easy and,
Because
yeah.
the language of the resolution is which may include, and maybe if we change may to shall include.
Okay, let's hear from our colleagues too. Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Muska.
Yes, so I did want to thank members of our audience today. It's great that we have this kind of resource here in Encinitas, here in Southern California. There is no bigger issue in terms of public safety than the storage of nuclear spent fuel on our coastline. Congressman Levin has made this a big point of his tenure in the United States House of Representatives to find a solution not only for San Onofre, but all of the spent fuel throughout the United States of America. And so how do we basically, in the short term, store safely this spent fuel, and then in the long term, safely move it to a long-term storage facility? And I like what Congressman Levin has done and the progress that has been made in terms of trying to prioritize the different sites. And there appears to be now an opportunity to kind of move even further on this issue. So this is really, very relevant at this point that we have this resolution before us. And I'm happy to support this resolution. I do think that I'm comfortable with the language that the Environmental Commission has provided us with, which is which may include, not shall include. And I would have a problem with if we changed it to shall. I think having spoken to members of the Environmental Commission, Ari and other folks, they basically said that they did not look into it and that they left it to the City Council. And other folks that have attended that commission meeting know that this was brought up to them, and they said they didn't really know about it and that they would basically let the City Council decide whether it's something that they wanted to participate in. And so no work has been done in terms of who we would associate ourselves with. This is an important issue with a lot of folks out there that are forming collaboratives, and we want to make sure that we're forming a collaborative that makes the most amount of sense for our city, and that we're basically looking at it from where can we be the most useful and helpful in this effort. Again, it's to, in the interim, how do we store this stuff as safely as possible? How do we move it as safely as possible? How do we store it in the long term as safely as possible? And how do we get federal assistance to do that? And so I think that this resolution moves us in the right direction, ensuring that millions of people are not at risk of this nuclear waste being any kind of problem for us. But I don't think that we should change which may include to shall include without further discussion and further research into this organization and whether or not it's an organization that really matches our values and matches the type of effort that we want to put in. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Councilmember Lyons, I spy Ari Novi sitting there underneath his mask, and I hadn't spied you before. So I wanted to make sure and call on you because this did come from the Environmental Commission. Would you like to add any thoughts?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, I think Deputy Mayor Musk really summed it up well in terms of the rationale from the Environmental Commission to leave the language at the discretion of the council and potentially to take it to staff. We were aware of this group coming together. We were aware very late in the process that the county supervisors had come into the coalition. But I think the issue that came before the Environmental Commission was really about the current situation, at Songs and what's happening now, and whether or not the monitoring that's in place is appropriate and enough. and some of the other issues that you've heard around storage containers and location and things like that. And of course, it's critically important that the federal government lead the process to establishing a more permanent, long-term nuclear waste storage facility. Those are really two completely separate issues, especially given the likelihood of the time frame it will take to, determine an alternative to Yucca Mountain and implement it. So we wanted to throw this in there because it's important and there's action around it now and you should consider it, but we wanted to make sure that it was not thought of as solving, the more immediate concerns that we really heard echoed over and over from so many in the community. And it's sometimes a sleepy job out there in the commissions, unless you're in the planning commission. But this is an area where, at least in my tenure on the environmental commission, I think we heard more spontaneous and really unified messages from the public about the level of concern and the kind of concern. So I'll say that, again, Deputy Mayor Musk really, what he said is very, very accurate in terms of why the commission provided the exact language that we did here. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ari. Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you. I just want to reinforce that I am very happy with the way things come out of the Environmental Commission. So I want to thank Ari and also Eric Steenblock for how thoughtful you are about how you craft things to come before us, because I think this hits just the right tone, where it identifies what what the concerns are, your research and your educated opinion, but allows us some opportunities to craft what's the best way forward based on who we are and what our resources are, and maybe we want to dedicate more resources, and it's all kind of a moving assessment of what we can do. But I love some of the items that you've listed here as far as potential future actions. And I appreciate that you formatted it this way. I look forward, I just want to kind of raise my hand and say, I want to be a part of moving us forward in showing leadership. And I think we've shown leadership in the past in environmental issues and environmental planning and being forward thinking. And I think this fits very nicely into our model of what's important for our city to do. So I hope that we engage in this and come back with some more specific action items very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, or Councilmember Kranz, did you want to speak again?
Yeah, I'm assuming that if it's in the resolution to begin with, that there has been a minimum level of vetting of the organization, but if I was wrong, I apologize. My original request was to have it back on agenda, and that's certainly preferred. But just sending it with May and then no commitment to bring it back I don't think is going to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Okay. Great. So we'll move forward with it as it's written, and then we'll leave the motion as it is. So I think I motioned and you seconded. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming to speak and listening.
Motion carries unanimously. Takes us to item 8I.
Okay, so speaking of environmental leadership, and I would ask Crystal Nahara to stay in the room for this. So as we all know, we have enacted a really ambitious electrification ordinance, and we are approving on this consent item buying 2 cars, one of them not even hybrid, and one of them hybrid. And I guess I just really I'm having some heartburn about this. This is like round 2 on vehicle replacements that we have talked about, where it had been proposed by the city staff that we buy gas cars. And I just really think we as a city need to lead on moving to electric cars. So when I look at the staff report and I see that the fire department, the Fire Prevention Division wants these cars to do various types of safety inspections and complaints during the week, and that they are customer service related needs. This is not the kind of thing where we need to be using our cars to drive to like the Sierra Nevada to fight fires up there. These are for our customer service related needs. And the description of one of the vehicles that is being used already Two of the vehicles are shared among 3 positions, and why you need another one because volunteer inspectors are coming in 1 to 2 times a week. I understand the need for a car, but I just really think we have to be more aggressive in the same way with our electrification ordinance, where we were more aggressive than the staff recommendation. You know, nowhere in the staff report does it say it was reviewed by Crystal, our climate action manager. But also just in general, you know, electric cars are really making strides every month. And so my hope is that we get reports like this from the council that already recommend buying all electric, and that we're moving all of our fleets, especially the non-highly technical cars, to be electric. So I just wanted to raise this today, and I'm so glad all the staff is here and can respond to it. But I will say that, you know, I really was not that happy to find like more cars purchased that use gas from the city. I think, you know, our leadership, we need to walk the talk. So go ahead, staff. Whoever wants to comment.
I'll go and start off, Hans. Mayor, and you're right. I do hear what you're saying, and we did evaluate our options for these vehicles. First off, I'd like to say in terms of leading and walking the talk and talking the walk, I went to a hybrid vehicle myself in 2017. Probably one of the first fire chiefs in the county that's done that. My predecessor had a gas guzzling truck, and most fire chiefs do. And I went for a hybrid sedan because I felt like that's something that I can do for the environment and for the city and for the city's goals of walking the talk and leading by example. So I just want to put that out there at first, that we do that, and we do our due diligence when we look at these vehicles. In terms of the fire prevention vehicle, you're right. Its primary duty is going to be going throughout the city doing inspections every day. But it also has a dual mission purpose. It is an emergency vehicle, and we have the capability of using it, if needed, for various emergency scenes, and we have used them in the past. In major storms, we've had our prevention folks helping us out on a lot of nuisance calls, like trees down, wires down. In event of evacuations, we can have both our prevention folks and our marine safety staff helping us out 24/7 out on the roadways for evacuations in our communities that may need it. So these vehicles do serve a dual purpose and a dual mission. And I think in terms of the prevention vehicle, it is a hybrid, correct? Yeah. So I mean, we are moving away from 100% gas to a hybrid vehicle, and you know, maybe if the battery capacity evolves even better, we can look at that. I will tell you, fire engines. I remember last time we came to council for a fire engine. You asked if there's any electric ones out there. There is an electric one out there now. And city staff, fire staff, and fleet staff evaluated that about 6 months ago. So you're right, the capabilities are coming, and they're changing every month. And we'll continue to look at the vehicles that we need to get. In terms of the marine safety vehicle, we evaluated the last time we did a major purchase, an all-electric or even ones with batteries, and it just doesn't work with the salt water. Not quite there yet.
Okay, did our climate action manager review this staff report? Because she's not mentioned in this staff report at all.
So she does typically review all of the fleet staff reports. So yes, I believe she has.
She did. Okay. So in the staff report, it says capital outlay electric vehicle Hyundai Kona would be $40,000, and the Ford hybrid is $51,000. So I'm not convinced this down trees in that really you need to have a hybrid for that. Like I will trust our climate action coordinator or manager for the sand, basically. I mean, the sea air thing doesn't make any sense to me. We all live next to the sea air. But if there's a sand issue with electric and there really are not any marine safety vehicles, then I'm willing to go with that. But, you know, this idea that this is the fourth vehicle in this group for fire, and it has to be it has to be hybrid. I'm a no on that. I really feel like we need, not you personally walking the talk, which is great. I'm thrilled to hear that, but us as a city, that we need to be investing in and creating a culture within our fire department of the people who are driving it. They know how to charge it. They know when to charge it. They know how to look at the battery. I mean, the batteries are over 100 miles. I mean, there's just, in one day, going to down trees, that just isn't persuasive to me. I really, and I think we need to be moving in a different direction. But I'll call on my colleagues, so Councilmember Kranz.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate you bringing it up and pulling this item. And I would say that for me, I think the most important part is that if you want to bring forward a proposal to purchase anything other than an electric vehicle, you need to get a quote for the electric vehicle. You need to be able to give me a comparison between a fully electric vehicle and anything else, so I can analyze whether it makes sense, whether there's a requirement for not purchasing the fully electric vehicle. So that's what I do agree on the marine safety vehicle purchase, because I remember going through that issue. They've tried hybrids before in LA and it just didn't work, and I can support approving that, but I would like to strike new vehicle number 2 and ask that they come back with something that gives me a side-by-side comparison and an explanation about why it isn't adequate to purchase electric.
Thank you. I mean, I would just like to give direction that they come back with electric, or a reason they can't buy. So the default should be electric. And that, just like our buildings, I mean, our building commitment was major for all new buildings to not have gas infrastructure, and then we're about to buy a brand new car that uses gas when we don't need to. I mean, I just don't feel like that's in line with what we're doing in other areas of the city. Deputy Mayor Muska.
Yeah, no, I recently had an opportunity to test drive and to kick the tires of some new electric vehicles that are coming out this year and next year, and it's amazing, and really kind of just, there's a lot of electric vehicles out there. There's a lot of options out there. A lot of automakers that are now investing in electric vehicles, and so there are just a number of options. And so I'm not going to repeat what has already been said, except to say that I support the fact that we need to move to electric vehicles as quickly as possible, and we need to identify any kind of impediment. So, or if there are impediments as to, the mayor mentioned, perhaps there's range anxiety, or there's other things that, or somebody doesn't know how to operate an electric vehicle, or perhaps there's not infrastructure available for the charging of that vehicle. But the range is, I mean, they're in excess of 200 miles, and if you're just in a 19 square mile town, circling around, there's no, and it's a redundant vehicle in some ways. There's no reason why it shouldn't be electric vehicle. And if there are impediments, please bring that to our attention so we can ameliorate those impediments. We can level them, make this something that's really happening in our city, because we want to be leaders in this way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to respond?
I would like to, yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We did evaluate the Kona. In fact, that was our first option to look at. And what we found was the EVs, technology-wise, aren't there to support the auxiliary equipment that the fire department requires. So that being a multifaceted vehicle, it requires radios and lights on it for response purposes as well. So that's why we ended up leaning towards the hybrid, because they can't outfit that particular car with the equipment required.
I just don't buy that. I mean, I'm sorry. I want a full report from every city and their fire departments showing that there's not one other city that's green and progressive that isn't able to run their lights with electric. I just don't find that credible. I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong and off base on this, and there just isn't any of this technology that supports sirens and lights, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. So, I mean, I would like Councilmember Kranz said, just come back to us with a lot more information that justifies it. Like, there's no way we can do it for all of these reasons, so that we have some explanation that's more than just, we looked at the Kona and we don't think it's going to work. Because to me, it seems like we're more comfortable with Fords. Like, we already have Fords. It's part of what we use, and that's what we want. So that, that's to me what this kind of just, and I really want to make sure that that's not what's happening here.
But we've seen the president driving the Ford F-150 or whatever it is. Ford is making.
Exactly. So Ford is even making it.
And we've got we've got a Ford dealership in town. So
exactly. So let's have an electric Ford, all electric. Yeah, I didn't realize our president was driving one. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to move that we authorize, as long as our climate action manager says that she's fully evaluated the marine safety vehicle. And do you want to say anything, Crystal? Because I'm happy to recommend we send that one back for further analysis too.
Yes, I did review this report and worked with Ashley to evaluate the vehicles. Part of that evaluation, though, does rely on the expertise of our fire department, and as it relates to their needs, and specifically for the marine vehicle, when they respond to emergencies on the coast where they could potentially be in contact with the sand and the water. That is where we have to draw the line in terms of the marine safety vehicle. So I do support that recommendation, and I think we can certainly come back with some additional information related to electric options for the other vehicle.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So on this item, I'll move that we approve the addition of the marine safety vehicle and ask for the fire prevention vehicle to be brought back with more information.
Second.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just, not to beat a dead horse, but I'll just say that whenever vehicles come to us at the city council at every level, fire, water districts, city staff, I really think they all need to be the presumption of electric at the beginning. So that with, and it should be designed to say, these are all the reasons we can't do it, if that is the truth, not just like one line or something. And it should be, Crystal should look at it in great depth.
I'm willing to also come by if we wanted to kind of set up a time where we can really look at the needs of the fire department, specifically of the technology that you would want outfitted on a vehicle, and try to understand even more why that's incompatible with the vehicles that are out there and on the market, and something that we can purchase. But I'm willing to kind of take that step further, just to understand. To meet you out there and to see what cannot be adapted with the technology that we have out there.
Yes, staff will return with a more comprehensive report.
Thank you. Thank you for that offer, Deputy Mayor. Okay, so now we're on to item 10A, which is the CAFR, or the AFR, or no, the ACFR. Sorry. Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, ACFR.
Yes, that's correct. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. This is the presentation for the ACFR for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. And here again with us is the city's engagement partner, Jennifer Farr of Davis Farr CPAs.
I don't know if your microphone's on.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I'm here to present the results of the annual audit for the City of Encinitas for you. And I have a brief presentation to walk you through some of the audit results. We have completed the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. And our engagement includes an audit of the city and also an audit of the San Dieguito Water District financial statements. And included in our report is our required communications to those in governance. I wanted to let you know that we have not completed the single audit of federal awards because we are waiting for information from the federal government to tell us exactly what they want tested, but that testing should be completed around the February timeframe. On the first page of the financial section of the financial statements, you'll find our audit opinion, and we issued an unmodified audit opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that you can receive. It means that the financial statements and footnotes are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. This year's audit opinion also includes an emphasis of a matter for the implementation of a new accounting standard that changed the presentation of the fiduciary activities. Included in the beginning of the report, right after the audit opinion, is management's discussion and analysis, which provides an overview of the financial statements on a combined level. So you'll have the governmental and the business type of funds. Everything is presented on a full accrual basis of accounting in this presentation, and I wanted to point out a few things for you. So on a combined basis, the total assets of the city increased by $13.6 million, and this is due primarily to an increase in the investment in capital assets. And liabilities increased by almost $4 million, and this is primarily due to the American Rescue Plan Act funding that was received prior to June 30, but the funding has not been spent. So it's recorded as unearned revenue until the funding is spent in the subsequent years. On the statement of activities and changes in net position, the total revenues of the city increased by $5.7 million. This is predominantly due to a $3.6 million increase in property taxes and a $1.7 million increase in sales tax in the governmental activities. And in the business type activities, there was a $2.3 million increase in business type charges for services. Looking now at the expenses, the total expenses for the city increased by $4.3 million. This is due to increases in the general government function, public safety, and engineering services. And in total, the city's financial position improved by $10.8 million. $3.5 million is attributable to governmental activities, and $7.3 million is attributable to business type activities. I always like to take a brief look at the general fund. It's the main operating fund of the city. In the general fund, the revenues of $83.3 million were higher than what was budgeted at $80.3 million, which is a good sign. And the expenditures of the general fund were within the city council approved budget of $72 million. Every single one of the city's general fund departments operated within the city council approved budget. In total, the general fund revenues exceeded expenditures by $14.5 million, and after the general fund transferred money to other funds, the general fund reported a small decrease of $43,000. I mentioned in the beginning the implementation of a new accounting standard, and so I'll briefly just point out that in the prior year, the fiduciary funds only reported assets and liabilities, and now they're required to have more of an income statement or the additions and deductions. So you have a new schedule in your report that was not present last year. And that resulted in the restatement of net position at the beginning of the year to implement that accounting standard. As part of our audit, we review internal controls over all of the key accounting cycles, including cash receipting, cash disbursements, payroll, grant management, capital assets, and information systems. And as a result of our evaluation and testing, I'm happy to report that there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls. And additionally, your audit is performed in accordance with government accounting standards or government auditing standards. Those standards require that the auditors test for compliance with laws and regulations that we believe are direct and material to the financial statements, and I've included some of those areas that we test on this slide. And again, I'm happy to report that there were no instances of non-compliance as a result of the testing that we performed. So lastly, I just wanted to thank the city staff for their efforts during the audit. We start the audit in the summer, and it takes a very long time to complete, and it's a strain on the finance staff's time. But at the end, we're happy to present this report to you and can answer any questions that you have about the annual comprehensive financial report, now called the ACFR, that we'll all have to get used to the new terminology.
Okay, thank you. I was really happy to read this audit report, and it's all very positive. So thank you for your work on it. Deputy Mayor Musk.
Yes, thank you for the ACFRA. And then I just have one question. In terms of the federal awards, so when would we audit that, and when should we expect a report on that?
We should have a final report around February. The problem is with all the CARES Act and the ARPA, the federal government is a little slow at providing the guidance on what exactly they want the auditors to test. And so that guidance is actually not available yet. And when it becomes available, we can perform the testing. We're expecting it by the end of this calendar year.
So is that unusual when compared to against previous years? Because I don't remember a year where we would bifurcate these analyses.
Yes, it's unusual. It really started with COVID. It started with the CARES Act.
All right. So other cities, when you're auditing them, it's acceptable for the policymakers to hear that we're not auditing these federal awards, because this is important, right? And we're all signing our names onto this or voting for it, and we have a fiduciary responsibility. So you're saying that it's acceptable that we basically not look at this right now because the analysis isn't available, because the data from the federal government's not available, and that's something that is being said in other cities, in other entities, public entities that have a responsibility to be audited.
It's not that it's not being looked at, because it will be audited and will be reported to you. It's just a time issue. This particular report is required to be issued by December 31st of the fiscal year of the ACFR. The other report, the single audit's not required to be filed until March of the following year. So we're still within the filing requirements, but I could understand your concern.
So am I fulfilling my fiduciary responsibility by approving a report that doesn't have an investigation and analysis of the federal awards? Can somebody answer that question?
Yes, Councilmember Mosca, you are in compliance. That report is not due until March 31st.
So though it's been bifurcated, it's gonna come back, and we'll see that by that deadline.
Yes.
Perfect.
As
Thank
long
you.
as the federal government comes up with their guidelines. But I'm sure if they don't, that they will extend the deadline.
Or all right, so they'll extend the deadline, or there'll be some accepted waiver, and we'll hear more about this in the future.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and move approval.
I'll second.
Do we have any public speakers? No, we do not. Okay. Oh, is it receive and file so we don't need to vote? Or we should vote?
I believe you should vote.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead. Okay, thank you very much. So now we're on to item 10B, which is City Council discussion regarding the COVID-19 pandemic executive order related to temporary outdoor dining.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members and members of the public. I'm Anna Kolamusi. We'll be giving your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and start with the background. On March 4th, 2020, the state of California proclaimed a state of emergency as a result of COVID-19. And through an executive order, the state acknowledged the impacts to small businesses throughout California due to social distancing requirements and stay-at-home orders. The order stated that administrative relief was imperative to support and minimize the impact of COVID-19 to small businesses. The city of Encinitas then declared its own local emergency on March 16th, 2020. The city council recognized the impacts of COVID-19 to the local economy and adopted several resolutions to provide regulatory reliefs for local businesses. And I'll go over those in the next slides. First, the City Council adopted Resolution 2020-33, which suspended the restrictions of off-site sale and delivery of alcohol by ABC licensed restaurants. The resolution states that the ease of regulations would remain in effect until either the local emergency is lifted or withdrawal of ABC's notice of regulatory relief. Next, City Council adopted Resolution 2020-40. This suspended certain business regulations, including authorizing outdoor commercial uses through temporary use permits on private property and through temporary encroachment permits within the public right-of-way. The resolution also waived parking requirements and allowed alcohol for expanded outdoor dining. The resolution stated that the ease of regulations would remain in effect until 3 months after the local emergency is lifted. For City Council Resolution 2020-53, it expanded the footprint of ABC licensed premises and allowed off-site sale and delivery of alcohol by premises without kitchen facilities. Several extensions have been issued throughout 2021. Governor Newsom issued its latest extension of the regulatory relief on November 10th, 2021, which extended outdoor dining, alcohol, and other reliefs to March 31st, 2022. In addition to the extension, the governor assigned Assembly Bill 61 that will be in effect January 1st, 2022, and extend to July 1st, 2024. This Assembly Bill extends ABC and local agencies' ability to provide continued regulatory relief as determined necessary by each jurisdiction as it relates to alcohol service and private parking standards. In anticipation of the expiration of the executive order, staff conducted 2 virtual public workshops, and that was on September 30th of 2021, and this was to inform the business owners of the upcoming expiration of the executive order, which at that time was of December this year. Between the 2 workshops, approximately 10 members of the public attended, and a list of the discussion points can be found on page 2 of the staff report. I did want to highlight one policy that is currently in place to support permanent outdoor dining, and that's the Sidewalk Cafe policy. That was established by the City Council in 2012. There are some limitations, however, with this permanent process, and that's that most areas require additional parking for dining expansion, and the policy specifically does not permit alcohol within the right-of-way. So in preparation for the executive order expiration in March 2022, staff is seeking input from the City Council regarding interim solutions and transition policies for restaurant businesses with outdoor dining areas. So I'll go over those 8 options in the next slides. We'll start with the first option is to extend waiver of parking requirements for outdoor dining in the sidewalk and on private property. The waiver would occur through the current temporary use permit, or TUP, for private property and temporary encroachment permit, TEP, for sidewalk dining. This second option would be to extend allowance of alcohol service for outdoor dining in the expanded sidewalk and private property areas. and again occur through the TUP and TEP process. And again, through that same process, for option 3, businesses may continue to expand outdoor dining areas with a limited capacity. This option would require a maximum number of parking spaces on a site that could be converted to temporary outdoor dining. So one example would be that the city could limit the number of existing parking spaces to be converted to dining, and that area not exceed 50%. The expanded outdoor dining areas would not require replacement or additional parking. This option would also require all existing applicants with TUPs and TEPs to amend each permit to demonstrate compliance with this modification. And the whole intent behind this is to provide the relief to support the restaurants, but at the same time minimize the impact on other uses. For option 4, City Council may also redefine the process for regulatory requirements. The options are listed here and also on page 3 of the staff report, and I'm happy to come back to it to go over them in detail. Another option is regarding the on-street parking. It's important to note that staff supports outdoor dining as it creates a vibrant pedestrian experience and provides economic benefits to the restaurants and the city. At this time, though, the city does not have any legal or regulatory policies, standards in place to continue outdoor dining that results in the loss of public parking. That requires approval from the California Coastal Commission when we'll talk about the amendments in a future slide. This option is to remove all temporary outdoor dining facilities utilizing on-street parking areas. As currently written, AB 61 does not provide provisions that require local jurisdictions to continue allowing on-street parking for outdoor dining. This option will require the removal of all temporary on-street dining facilities while the city initiates the amendment process for a long-term solution. With the current executive order extending to March 31st, 2022, and the city's resolution allowing on-street dining to expire 3 months beyond the expiration of the executive order, which would be June 30th, 2022, city staff is seeking direction on the deadline for the removal of on-street dining improvements. It's recommended that ample time be provided for Public Works to restore the parking spaces once the restaurant owners remove all of their improvements. Staff recommends all private facilities within the city's right-of-way be removed by May 31st, 2022. With option 6, all reliefs requested herein would apply only to outdoor dining. Therefore, all non-restaurant outdoor areas would be removed unless the appropriate discretionary permits are applied for and received approval from the city to allow permanent outdoor facilities. And as mentioned earlier in my presentation, the current Sidewalk Cafe policy prohibits alcohol in the public right-of-way. City Council may modify the current policy to allow alcohol within the right-of-way. However, this option would require staff to consult with the State Alcoholic Beverage Control to establish acceptable criteria such as fencing and other applicable requirements when allowing alcohol within a public right-of-way. Lastly, option 8 is to direct staff to initiate municipal code, specific plan, and local coastal program amendments to allow for the permanent use of private and public on-street parking spaces for expanded outdoor dining areas. If initiated, staff will return to a future City Council meeting with an agenda item and resolution to initiate the amendments. This process would require authorization from City Council to release an RFP for a consultant to prepare a parking utilization study for the loss of on-street public parking. This analysis will identify strategies and mitigation measures to offset the loss of public parking spaces, either through partnering with private property owners of underutilized parking lots to share parking spaces, identifying an opportunity for a new public garage or lot, or other mobility options that could demonstrate that reduced need to rely on a vehicle for transportation, thereby the need for parking spaces. The RFP would also include parking standard analysis to establish new parking standards for outdoor dining areas on private properties and sidewalks. This analysis would evaluate the current parking demands for dining areas and establish new parking standards as deemed appropriate. In addition, the parking studies, specific regulations would be required to define the parameters for outdoor dining, such as setbacks, locations, allowable and supporting structures, accessory structures, ADA improvements, and other things. To conclude, this slide provides a summary of all the 8 options for City Council to consider. I did want to state that you can choose one, several, or all. So it's up to the City Council. And with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Anna, you sound so sick. You need to go home and go to bed.
No, I was. It's just lingering. So I'm no longer sick. It's just, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll try to get you out of here as soon as possible.
That's okay. Yeah.
Do we have any public speakers? No, we do not. Okay. Councilmember Krantz.
That's one of the areas that the masks kind of help because, you know, you're not as quite as contagious. So good to have you here with us. Hope you get to 100% soon. I have a couple of questions. One is, as we're all wearing our masks again as a requirement by the governor, I believe, it's a state requirement. Is there any way that we can ascertain whether some of these dates are going to be pushed out even further so that it doesn't have that same 3-month time frame on it? I think that one of the most successful aspects of what we've done with the encroachments into the right-of-way is that we've given people the opportunity to dine outdoors, which creates a lot more confidence in the ability to go out. And so I am very interested in figuring out a way to continue this particular practice. I have also had some informal conversations with restaurateurs who indicated they would be willing to pay for the square footage of parking space that they have been granted as part of this encroachment. And I don't know whether it's legal for the city to lease right of way in that way, but I think that's something that we should look into so that as we're exploring the opportunities for parking studies, we could also incorporate the leasing of more parking area. We could also think about and look at what it would take to do valet parking perhaps in some of these areas, and to get as creative as possible so that we might be able to get permission from the Coastal Commission. So just a couple of thoughts, but from where I sit, figuring out a way to continue this practice of having these cafes and replacing space where 3,000-pound vehicles sit to space where people get the opportunity to enjoy each other's company is something that I would really want to prioritize. So I think that could we really adopt all these? Aren't there some of these actions that kind of are in conflict with one another?
So some of them, as mentioned, we would be required to come back to you, one for the RFP, and then the other would be for us to consult with ABC on the alcohol for the sidewalk cafe policy.
Well, maybe somebody's gone through this and strategized that kind of has a map for how we might get through this. I did not do that. But ultimately, my goal is to continue this program, so I hope we can get to that.
Well, let's hear from the former Business Association president, Councilmember Hinsey.
Yeah, I think, in a lot of ways, this is a long-time dream come true to be able to have dining all along our highway. And I don't see another scenario that we could have actually seen it come to life if it weren't for these conditions that we're under. And I think a lot of the fears that we could have predicted would have come to us had we proposed something like this have largely not been realized, and that, I think it's vibrant out there, but it's not overly vibrant. We don't have too much drinking. I think incentivizing people to come by rideshare, knowing that parking is limited, is actually a benefit to all of us because we don't have the risk of drunk drivers who, after a few drinks are going to get back in their car and drive home. I agree with Councilmember Krantz that I want to see us be able to extend these permanently in any way that we can that's at the most minimal risk to our dining establishments. I agree that charting that way forward is maybe not our expertise, but I look to you to be the experts on that. And I think, so all these options with the parking study that the Coastal Commission set forth for us, I think that these are good, but I find it hard to believe that they're going to put so many hoops for us to jump through, knowing that pretty much every coastal California city is in the same position right now. And so I hope that at some point they realize that this is kind of onerous. But along the lines of what Councilmember Krantz mentioned was that I do think one value of the parking study would be that we actually are able to come up with a value of each parking space that we have in the downtown area. I know we've probably done that before, but maybe those numbers are outdated now. And so knowing how much these are worth and being able to come up with either a rent or some type of a use fee for the dining establishments who are able to increase their profits because of this public use, I think we should definitely capitalize on that because they do owe it to the taxpayers to be able to compensate for that use in some way. As far as consulting with ABC to be able to extend the cafe alcohol service, I'm supportive of that. I think that there should be some discretion on the part of city staff to say either this is a business that does a great job of keeping their sidewalk clean and maintaining adequate clearance for ADA purposes and doesn't have too many code violations, things like that, that we would be able to say, you've got to prove yourself before we're going to allow your dining to include outdoor alcohol service. And also, I have a question about, how could any dining establishment just go ahead and opt for alcohol on the sidewalk if they wanted to, even ones that, might be more of a bar than a restaurant? So that's a question I have, and I hope that we can maintain that kind of discretion. Something that we discussed last time, or in our last meeting, was that we're adding 50 parking spaces as part of the new Cardiff cycle track project that are going to be coastal adjacent and even actually make it easier to access the coastline than these dining encroachments, than the parking that's under the dining encroachments right now. So I hope that that can be included as part of our negotiation with Coastal Commission, is that we are adding 50 parking spots. Can you explain, I don't quite understand, it sounds like if we pursue this long-term option, we actually would need to have the businesses remove their encroachments before they can go forward with a permanent one. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. Excuse me, I could try. So that is the only item that has not been covered by AB 61. The only protection that one has, as we see it, is the extensions of the executive orders. So to answer Councilmember Cran's question, there is a possibility of further extensions, and we keep an eye out for those, and that would be what would allow that to continue. But as far as we understand it, that's the only provision that does. So to answer your question, Councilmember Hinsey, yes, they would need to be removed once that is lifted while we are going through that permanent process.
So it sounds like you're just anticipating that the permanent process is going to take months, like far longer than what we have.
It could take a year, possibly longer.
Wow. Is there any way we can expedite that?
Yes, we'll work. Excuse me. Yes, we'll work with the Coastal Commission to expedite the process. I just wanted to highlight what you see, the options that you see tonight, options 1 through 4. Those are the interim options, and that would achieve the council's desire to extend the program to the extent feasible without violating any of our rules and codes and potentially running into issues with Coastal Commission. So options 1 through 4 would allow businesses to continue having outdoor dining with the exception of on-street dining. So they have the option of continuing sidewalk dining. They will continue to have the option of having outdoor dining on private properties, with the exception of on-street dining, that without absent any further extension by the governor, unfortunately, we can't continue those, because otherwise we would be potentially having issues with Coastal Commission that they could cite the city for not processing a local coastal plan amendment to allow the elimination of parking.
Okay. Do we have any idea, just a ballpark figure of how many parking spots in the coastal zone are dedicated to dining right now?
We don't have that, but we can collect that data and share that with the council.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So about those 4 options, I think we should definitely do that. We should do everything in our power to keep supporting our small businesses and making sure that they have the predictability and the collaboration of the city in the same spirit that we initiated these measures. And I'm honestly not sold on the need to limit the parking to 50%. I can't right now think of a reason why we'd want to do that, except for that it obviously advantages some businesses and disadvantages others. But I think the more parking that can turn over for these purposes, the better for our community. So, just in terms of the revenue that we get from the increased activity, and like I said, just people, in the Main Street world, it's a balance, but obviously when you have a parking problem, it often means that you have an oversubscribership to the businesses where people want to be. And I kind of think that we're in that position right now. So unless my colleagues feel strongly about the need to limit the parking to 50%, I don't think we need to go that far.
Okay, I support you. So hopefully you're making notes of the things she's saying. Councilmember Lyons.
Yes, so just to help try to navigate through the roadmap here, Councilmember Hinsey has suggested 1, 2, 3, and 4. And actually today we were able to get feedback from Leucadia 101 and Cardiff 101. And they also, so they are in support of 1 and 2. So that's good to know. They're in support of 1 and 2. And they're also in support of item 7. So looking at it from their perspective, that kind of complements what Councilmember Hinsey has said. I am also in support of 3 as far as limit new outdoor dining square footage. I'll defer to others as far as a percentage, but one thing I want to reinforce is the city lease that the restaurants would lease from the city. So an agreement there. One thing I don't see identified yet in these options, especially the ones I've just highlighted, and I think it may be detail that you'll hit later, but as people are navigating the sidewalk, I get a little bit sensitive to making sure we are conforming with ADA. And I know we have that already in our sidewalk cafe policy, and I would make sure we bring that in as we're looking at what we do with these TEPs and TUPs. I do see people with limited mobility having a hard time navigating through the chairs and tables and waitresses and waiters and everything that's happening in the sidewalk. But I think it's doable to do that well. As far as item 8, I hadn't spoken to it yet, but Leucadia 101 did indicate that item 8 they were also in support of, and I am as well as far as the permanent use. I kind of feel like we're headed in the direction of needing to do a parking utilization study anyway for a lot of reasons. And we really don't know where we're at until we do that. As far as how much do we have? Is it enough? Do we need more? Can we develop partnerships and develop more? It's kind of the give and take with new ones we're providing along the 101, along the cycle track, and we may have the assumption that we're underparked. I don't know, but I'd like to see the data on that. So I'm supportive of item 8 as well. That's where I stand. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so going last, I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said. I'm going to just say that I think that what we find in the downtown right now is extraordinarily vibrant, inviting, and has really been something that's been positive in this really tough year that we've had. And so I think the overarching goal for staff is to find a way to continue it, because it really has added value for not only the community of Old Encinitas and Leucadia, but the entire city. So I want to do whatever we can do to continue it. I'm not sure in terms of, I support all the interim measures that 1 through 4. I'm not sure that we have to, I think it's premature to set a certain percentage at this point, and maybe something that we want to look at in the future. But I just want more information because I'm not sure that 50% just seems arbitrary to me. And so I just want more information in terms of where it should be set, if it should be set at all. In terms of as we move toward kind of more the future, I think that we should work with a lot of the local businesses to do whatever we can to help with the removal of any temporary or almost looks, some of the stuff that's built into the right of way almost looks more permanent. So whatever we can do to help with the removal and to also preserve it for the future, just in case we're able to get a program through that makes sense. I'm not sure that 6 that it has to be specific to only restaurant outdoor uses, and so I would I'm not aware of any non-restaurant use now. I do see some businesses that sell some of their products close to their store, but not that much into the right of way. And so I'm in favor of something that's non-restaurant as well. I'd like to see that. And all the other stuff in terms of the future, I'm absolutely in favor of exploring and trying to move as quickly as possible on this. I was up in Santa Barbara not that long ago, and their entire State Street is shut down. And so to Councilmember Hensey's point, there's a lot of cities that have adjusted over the last year or so, and I think that my hope is that the Coastal Commission is going to see this as a plus in terms of just the community that has been built around some of these spaces, and that they'll work with the community to, specifically the city of Encinitas, to find ways to provide parking, maybe not stall for stall, but find ways of solutions, creative solutions for ensuring that there is parking in our downtown to enjoy the coast and other resources that we have, but without basically, really killing this kind of this experience that we've had over the last couple of years. So I'm in favor of the interim measures and something that's more permanent as well.
You say Santa Barbara shut down to cars or shut down to businesses?
Shut down to cars on State Street.
Yeah.
Not the whole city, just on State Street. But and there's other parts of Santa Monica and other places that are coastal cities where they've really kind of shut down large portions of their main streets, of their commercial districts to cars, and the restaurants and even non-restaurant uses are in the right of way.
Yeah, I don't think we're possibly doing that on 101, but it is interesting. So can you just tell me why we have number 6 on there? Why is that recommended or talked about?
Same with on-street dining. It's not mentioned in AB 61. AB 61 allows the relief of parking and alcohol for dining areas. And there is nothing that's continuing things like gyms, yoga. Those are the ones that have obtained temporary use permits to use their outdoor areas to do like a yoga class or have their gym facilities out there. That's an example that I can think of.
Yeah, the reason why we're, in addition to what Anna indicated, is unfortunately AB 61 only provides relief to restaurants and outdoor dining. It does not provide any reliefs for parking related to other uses such as retail, recreational uses. So the interim solutions that we're proposing is leveraging the benefits that we're getting from AB 61 that gives us the flexibility to further waive some the parking requirements, and to allow these to continue without requiring these uses or restaurants to have to show us parking, that they meet parking. And it's also, we're using AB 61 to provide the justification to coastal that we don't need a local coastal plan for the interim solution, that it's a state law. So it's a balancing the state agencies' requirements where you have a regulation, a state law competing with
Okay.
coastal
Yeah,
issues.
that's
So.
okay. So basically, it sounds like what you're saying is number 6 is actually like not even optional. Because there's no way that you can provide non-restaurant outdoor uses. So, like,
It's an option. They have to remove it. If they propose it, they have to show that they comply with our current codes. So they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the temporary use permit process. There's a separate process that they can go through, but they don't get the benefit of waiving the parking for those outdoor uses.
but so that's sort of like an FYI to council. It's not like, we're not really weighing in, it's not really an option, right? Because it isn't authorized under the state law to
That's
waive
correct.
it. Okay. So really it doesn't need to be on this option summary, because it's not an option,
Yes, it's more of a disclosure that this is.
what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other one of these 8 that is not an option but is a disclosure?
The only other option is 5 is the removal of on-street dining.
Which is also not an option.
Not an option if the governor does not extend the order
Okay.
past March 31st.
Okay. So I'll just state that I support as much of our sidewalk dining as we can allow. So I think, as my colleagues have stated, it is really good for our downtown businesses, for vibrancy, for creating a sense of place. This is a great opportunity, and we should support that. So I fully support all of the things that lead in that direction. And I also agree that 50% of parking sounds completely arbitrary, and we shouldn't institute that at this point unless we needed to legally for some reason. Councilmember Krantz.
Yes, and I just want to clarify on number 5, the reason why that's not optional is because the Coastal Commission requires that we amend our LCP and other things related to parking. Is that, maybe you have a more articulate way of stating it, but that's the gist of it?
It's primarily the impact of public parking. So public
Impact on
parking,
public parking. So
is considered a coastal resources.
So, they were really nice guys and gals for allowing us this temporary use. And I wonder if there's a way that we could be persuasive and provide them with empirical evidence that says the beaches have never been busier in spite of this loss of parking. And that in the interests of, community engagement and all that this outdoor dining has brought, perhaps we could ask them to figure out a way to extend it in a non-emergency situation while we all work on our LCP amendments. Because I suspect there are other beach communities that have gone through this exact same thing, and they're also going to be making application. And it just seems insane that we're going to require them to pull all of these, improvements out while the bureaucracy, just grinds on. And so I don't know what it would take, whether it's hiring an attorney with expertise in the Coastal Act, if they have a mechanism, if there's somewhere in the Coastal Act that allows them to say, in a non-emergency situation, we're going to allow this to continue until we process all these LCPAs. I also want to agree with Deputy Mayor Musk that these are all very important things that we address citywide, and I did dine at the Craftsman, and I sat at a table that was encroaching into their parking space. They don't happen to be in the coastal zone. So my hope is that we can deal with the non-coastal zone restaurants and situations, Breakfast Republic. The bad news is that on one side of the street, they are in the coastal zone, and on the other side of the street, they're not. But for those lucky businesses that are not in the coastal zone, perhaps there's something immediate that we could do to allow them to continue, because this confidence boost that patrons of these restaurants get by being able to sit outside, I think is very valuable. And so, again, I want to do everything that we can to continue this.
The
Yes.
city manager wants to weigh in here.
I just wanted to clarify that what the governor's order does is it allows us to skip coastal commission. And so when we talk about removing the on-street dining, it really is because when the governor's order goes away, we then have to go through the coastal commission process. So that's the piece that's required, and the piece that the governor's order actually gave us a bypass on that. And I was going to ask the Development Services Director, I believe that there is a group of cities statewide that have been talking about that, and maybe you could give an update if there is any on that. Some cities have just removed the dining already and have just kind of moved on with the process. I think, did our neighbor Carlsbad already do that? I'm not sure. So anyway, I thought you could give an update on that group of cities that are working together.
Thank you, City Manager. I just wanted we, as indicated in our staff report, and we'll state it as well in there, that we fully support outdoor dining. We've been working diligently with most of our neighboring coastal cities, City of Carlsbad, City of Oceanside, City of Solana Beach, and Del Mar, and some of our non-coastal cities to look at how are they addressing the issue of outdoor dining. And for the City of Carlsbad, they already have a mechanism in place. They've already conducted parking utilization analysis, and they do have an outdoor dining plan for some of I believe the Barrio Logan area. And that's where the idea of the parking utilization requirement came from, is after talking with Coastal. We have monthly coordination meeting with Coastal, and this is a consistent issue that we keep bringing up in terms of what are some of the creative ways that we could allow these businesses to continue with the outdoor dining. We even brought up the issue of the city of San Diego. How are they able to do what they're doing in terms of extending the outdoor dining? And it's while you may think that it's apples to apples, but unfortunately it's not. The city of San Diego have ample parking lots that are available, and also most of their areas are outside of the coastal zone. That's how they're able to move forward with their expansion of the outdoor dining areas. So we've had those conversations with Coastal, and we'll continue to have those conversations with Coastal Commission staff to identify areas or identify opportunities for us to allow these businesses to continue, which is why we laid out these options, fully taking advantage of AB 61. And AB 61 allows us to bypass the coastal process and allows these businesses to continue in the interim while we're working on the long term. So the long term is not just looking at parking, but also we're going to be looking at design standards. How we want to make sure that we're not just allowing any improvements in our public right of way. We want to make sure that they're addressing the ADA issue, also safety concerns that we may have. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fully analyze those issues while we went through this interim, or when COVID hit, when we allowed these regulatory reliefs, because we didn't have the time to analyze them. So when we go through this permanent process, with all the reliefs being removed, then the liability and all of those issues will now be on the city, because we wouldn't have the state law and the executive order to rely on. So our goal through this process is, one, create an interim process to allow these businesses to continue to the extent that they comply with the state law, but also identify the permanent, long-term permanent, that would address not only the state law requirements, but also Coastal Commission's concerns.
Okay, so do you have enough direction from the comments you've received?
Yes, so if I could summarize to make sure that we heard, that we understood the council's direction. So you are supportive of option 1 and option 2. not option 3. So there wouldn't be any limitation on the area of expanded outdoor dining area. So we're not going to implement 3. You're supportive of item or option 4. We are moving forward with option number 5, or to remove on-street dining. The only direction that we're looking for is the timing of when we should remove the improvements. So we can notify businesses that they have to remove the private improvements in the public right-of-way by a certain deadline. So that's the only direction that we would be seeking. And then also 6, and then 7, I believe some of you supported number 7, so we will be updating Sidewalk Cafe policy to allow alcohol. And then just for a side note, that it will be a permanent modification, that it's not just for COVID, but it's part of our existing Sidewalk Cafe policy. So to allow alcohol services. And then 8, we will come back with a resolution to initiate the amendments to our codes to allow outdoor dining on a permanent basis.
Okay, yeah. I just want to clarify that are we moving this into a motion or not? Because if we're not, that's fine. But if we are, I don't want to be voting on something that we don't have discretion over anyway. So like if somebody's, like for example, that gym defined by Marcus, which has moved in Cardiff at the bottom of Birmingham, it's moved into a place that has a lot of parking, that's only its own parking. And, whether they're operating in the parking lot or not, I mean, I don't want to be in the position of voting on something that says you have to remove your non-restaurant outdoor use for some gym that's operating in a parking lot when we don't have the discretion to vote on it anyway. So there are these,
Yes.
So for obvious reasons. So that's why I think it's important that we're only weighing in on things that we can actually control. So if a gym has to remove that because of state law, then that's the state of it. So it should just be removed.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then this question of when, because you just said, oh, well, you need to tell us like on what timeline. I mean, I think if there's uncertainty about whether this is going to be extended again, then we shouldn't start telling them to remove their on-street dining, right? Or
yes, our goal is currently the executive order will expire March 31st. So that means that our local resolution will expire come June 31st. So if there's no further extension from the governor, then the local order will expire June 31st. Our hope is to have those facilities removed in time to allow our public works folks to be able to remove our public improvements that are out in the right-of-way by June 31st.
Why can't we engage in active notification through the main streets, through the chamber, to the businesses directly, and then, but not say that you don't have to have it removed until June?
Okay, we'll work with the 101 main streets to get the messaging out, but we'll also coordinate with our public works folks in terms of the timing of how much time they need for the city to remove those the barricades that we put out to accommodate the outdoor dining.
I mean, the more time, the better. I think that's the point.
Okay.
Also, I think that, again, just how we do it, it should be working with local businesses and helping them out. And just this is something that has provided them with assistance when they most needed it, but it's also provided, an invaluable service and service to the community at large. And so we want to help them out in terms of, notification and removal of whatever they've invested in that right away.
And also, I'd just say that if it's really important that we communicate really clearly and responsively to all the businesses in the city. And as was stated, there are a lot of them on El Camino Real too. So I would definitely be willing to support more financial assistance to have a really good outreach here. Because I've also heard from the 101s that it's difficult for them because they have businesses that are complaining to them saying, well, in San Diego, they do X and so why is it we're not doing that? And to explain, well, they're not in the coastal zone in that area. Or so just to make sure that you feel you're well-resourced to effectively, quickly, accurately with, the data or the flyer or the staffing we need. Like, I just want to say that I would be willing to support whatever is needed to make that successful. So I hope that it doesn't come back to us like, well, the city didn't really appropriately resource that, so we weren't able to respond because we had someone out sick or on vacation or whatever. Like, I just really don't want that to happen here. Because I think for some, this is really going to be a big deal, and they're going to be unhappy about it. And we need to have that personal touch with the city to explain exactly why and what we can do and what we can't do.
Maybe the Development Services Director could talk a little bit about the communication and the meetings that we've had with the 101s and with the public meetings via Zoom that we've had with businesses and what we continue to plan to do.
Yes, we've had several outreach efforts, communications with the 101 Main Streets and the Chambers of Commerce. They were invited and also included as part of the notification of all meetings, including tonight's meeting, to notify them of the next thing that's coming up related to this issue. So we've been diligent to engage the business community, the Chambers and the 101 Main Streets, and we'll continue to do that. And we need their input. We need their engagement, and they know the businesses better than us, and they're a good partner and ally. So we engaged them early on in the process several months ago. To get their feedback, and we solicit their input on what's the best way to reach out to the businesses. And then when we had the Zoom call or the workshop, the 2 workshops that we have, it wasn't well attended. We're very disappointed in the attendance. And so we reached out again we provided the Zoom or the PowerPoint presentation to all the 101 Main Streets to share with businesses. We made ourselves available for businesses to reach out so we can further engage them, and we'll continue to be available. So we'll also continue to reach out to the 101 Main Streets and make sure that, and as well as the Chambers, for the businesses that are on El Camino Real. So we'll continue to have the robust outreach efforts.
Okay,
Make sure that,
yeah, I mean, I'll call on my colleagues here in a sec, but saying we're having a meeting and all you people didn't come, so it's your fault. Like, I think the truth is we have to have direct, specific outreach to that business. Like, you are still operating you're doing on-street dining, and you can't do it for these reasons. Or here, the flyer that has the phone number to know what rules apply to you, because they don't care about all the other rules. They only care about what applies to them. So they don't want to go to a big meeting with like a whole bunch of jargon and all this kind of stuff. They just want to know, do I have to close? What are you going to do for me? What's the timeline? It's just always very specific. So it's like saying you want to go to a seminar when really you want to hire a lawyer to handle your own problem. You don't want to go to a seminar on the law,
Yeah.
So,
That's a great point. And so the next step, so our purpose tonight is to get clear direction from the council on what's the direction we want to move forward. Now that we've received the direction, the next phase would be we're going to inform have the outreach and be very specific and direct on what the order is and the timeline in which they need to remove so we'll be more specific with our future outreach now moving forward, given that we've now received direction from the council.
Okay, great. Councilmember Krantz.
Very quickly, I couldn't agree more. That is that direct contact. I get questions, and I do my best to answer, and in every instance, I tell them I'm doing everything that I can to get it extended, but my power is obviously limited, especially if the Coastal Commission is involved. And I would say that we do have some parking spaces down in front of the ale house that if they're not processing a permit, maybe we could remove those barricades from in front of their restaurant. Phil's Coffee would probably appreciate that.
I've had that exact same thought. Like, why are these blocked off? Nothing's happening right here.
Do we know if there's a permit in the works? They had a fire at the ale house?
Not at this time.
Yeah, so I wonder, because they have an alcohol serving license, and 6 months after they close the doors, I think that's a trigger, isn't it?
So as far as the alcohol, there is no expiration sunset. Unfortunately, or the use permit runs with the land.
But 6 months after they've ceased operations, the conditional use permits expire, do they not?
They do not.
They do not.
I believe the 6 months you're referring to is the nonconformity. If it's a nonconformity that doesn't have a permit, then you lose that nonconformity.
Councilmember Lyons.
Just a quick comment in that and it sounds like there are additional resources that would be available. This might be a great opportunity to actually go door to door with the businesses that are using the sidewalks and bring a flyer. Just because it's, it seems like, yeah, that's above and beyond, but on the other hand, it's hard to communicate this. They're really busy running their business, and if you show up at the right time when they're not too busy, but they're open, and you talk to the manager, you give him the information and say, we'll talk to the owner, let him contact us or whatever, it may be a process that you find more success with.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, it's a limited percentage that are actually outside anyway.
Yeah.
So it's clearly less than 50%. So, okay. So is that enough direction?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I think, council, we should push through instead of taking a break. You guys okay with that? Okay. We're on to item 10C. This is related to SB 9, Urgency Ordinance. And then we have our streetscape update, and then we're finished.
All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Jennifer Gates, Planning Manager. I'm presenting tonight on the SB 9 Housing Development Urgency Ordinance and the resolution to initiate a municipal code and specific plan amendment. So just quickly, going to go through the background again of why we're here today. So the state approved SB 9 in September of 2021, which will become effective on January 1st of 2022. And this state law is going to add 2 sections in the planning law and then in the Subdivision Map Act that is going to allow for qualifying duplex units or 2 units within all single-family residential zones. It also, in the Subdivision Map Act, will allow for the approval of a parcel map, which we're calling an urban lot split, within a single-family residential zone. It also amends timing of map extensions and expiration dates. And on November 17th, staff presented an informational presentation on this law and provided information on some of those restrictions. So again, just a few highlights. So the 2-unit development applies to all single-family residential zones. It's not allowed on sites that are historic landmarks or within historic districts. It does need to meet location requirements and restrictions in regards to specific aspects in regards to wetlands and flooding. The project could also not alter or demolish deed-restricted affordable housing or rent-controlled housing or other housing that has been rental or a tenant occupied in the last 3 years. And the project also cannot demolish more than 25% of the exterior walls. If the site has not been occupied by a tenant, then they can. Urban lot split, all the previous provisions apply as well. But for an urban lot split, the lot split has to result in 2 approximately equal-sized lots. 60/40 is the max split. Each new lot has to be at least 1,200 square feet. The lot split cannot be established through a prior SB 9 lot split, so you can't do it repeatedly. And neither the owner nor any person acting with that owner has previously subdivided an adjacent parcel. And then the requirements required for the approval of the 2 residential units on a single lot, so all those that I described previously. So the Encinitas Municipal Code does not currently allow these types of developments within our single-family zone, and many developers and architects and the public have requested information on how the city intends to implement these provisions that go into effect on January 1st. City staff has prepared an urgency ordinance to protect public health, safety, and welfare of the community while implementing SB 9, and staff currently proposes to implement SB 9 as written with some clarification and does not propose any new objective zoning standards at this time. So some of the aspects that are proposed within this urgency ordinance for clarification are specific definitions, examples of which are adjacent and ministerial. Also clarifies what is defined for number of units. So no more than 2 primary residential units would be allowed per lot, and describes how they could be allowed within an existing unit or accessory building, can be attached or detached. And then also clarifies that 1 ADU would be allowed per primary unit on a lot. So that's a max of 4 units, which is what is the state law specifically states. It does state also that parcels that propose both the 2-unit residential development and an urban lot split, that the ADUs will be permitted if all the objective standards are still met. So this is the zoning, development standards, the general plan. So they still need to be met to allow those ADUs. So this is different than our ADU state law because it is optional to enforce. Also, the development and design standards. So the SB9 projects must comply with all the objective zoning, subdivision, and design standards within our general plan, municipal code, and other policy documents. If a single-family zone property does not allow for those 2 single-family units, then you can have the 800 square foot minimum size unit with the 4-foot rear and side yard setbacks. And in addition, for parking, the clarification so that it's clear that 1 parking space is allowed per unit and that no parking requirements will be required when located within a half-mile distance of a high-quality transit corridor, which in this case for the city of Encinitas will be the city's train station. So as a reminder also, CEQA does not apply to any duplex approvals or urban lot split approvals, and it also does not apply to any ordinances that implement these provisions. Also, the Coastal Act will still apply, but no public hearings are required. So coastal development permits will be required within our coastal zone for a 2-unit development as well as an urban lot split. However, there will be no public hearing, and the appeal would only apply if the site is located within our Coastal Commission appeal zone, and then an applicant or a neighbor could appeal that project directly to Coastal Commission. And again, SB 330 does apply, so we do have to implement using only objective standards. So the next steps on this project is the staff is currently working on creating the forms and checklists to be ready on January 1st, as well as the affidavit and covenants that will be required with all these developments. Also, tonight before you is the resolution to initiate the municipal code amendment, the local coastal program amendment, and the specific plan amendments. And this is to develop objective standards and further refine the ministerial process for the urban lot splits and the 2-unit developments. So staff's recommended actions is to adopt the ordinance, which is an urgency ordinance of the city, to allow, to provide the regulations to implement urban lot splits and 2-unit residential development in single-family zones under SB 9, and as well as to adopt Resolution 2021-120, which initiates these amendments that were previously discussed. And staff is here to answer any questions that you have.
If I might just interject a little bit of information too. The urgency ordinance that you have in front of you is going to require 4 votes because it's an urgency ordinance under health, safety, and welfare. That also means that if it gets the 4 votes, it will be immediately effective. But it'll be effective because it's an interim urgency ordinance for 45 days. That means it'll come back before you, but then you get to extend it up to 22 months. So that's the good news, but you'll see it again quickly while staff works on the other information that they've highlighted in the report. Also, the reso that you have before you will only take 3 votes. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor. There is public comment there too. Yes. Okay, let's do public comment first.
There are 2 speakers, Geraldine Kessler, followed by Jennifer Hewitson.
Okay.
Hello, Mayor, City Council, Jennifer Hewitson, Wotan Drive. I'm not sure I really understand the urgency to this proposed ordinance. But anyway, we are at a critical point in our city's existence. We've tried for decades to preserve and protect this place. Our open space, our trees, our low profile, our history, beauty, quiet, and our wildlife neighbors, nature at our doorstep. This is about the spaces in between. We tend not to notice a vacant lot here, a wild hillside there, a side yard. They save us. The state does not see this as a positive. It sees wasted space, not enough condos, not enough apartments, not enough height, density, or congestion, not enough misery. SB 9 will fix that. It truly is a misery loves company law. It will take us down a peg. How dare we stay so lovely, so livable? The devils of density will show us a thing or two. We must become treeless, characterless, hopeless, and powerless to fight against a trumped-up housing crisis we can never build our way out of. No, it will never be enough, and we know this. Just look around Orange County and LA County cities. This kind of density is counter to everything you seem to want to accomplish. Carbon reduction, tree canopy preservation, open space protection, traffic reduction, all these worthy goals are doomed by density. To quote Councilman Kranz a few weeks ago, traffic sucks. I agree. I don't believe that raising and multiplying 4 times the number of units, people, and cars per lot will help this problem that we have. What we need is open space overlay. We need mature tree preservation in our standards. We need clear building design standards. We need historic places designation in much more of our town, and a vision for a better future than the state has in mind for us. As you point out in the agenda item, our municipal code does not allow this kind of development. Amen to that. We must keep it that way. Any changes the city plans to make to the language in our code should reinforce those rules, should protect us from this latest destructive state law, protect and respect the California Coastal Act, protect and respect CEQA review, and protect our sense of place, beauty, quiet, livability, and the spaces in between. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosca.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your comments tonight, and thank you for your emails on this topic and others. I do read your stuff, and I appreciate your advocacy. You asked a question, and I think it's a legitimate question, which is why an urgency ordinance? And it's something that we've been talking about, been wanting to have a discussion about, can we at the local level have any input as to how SB 9 is implemented? Do we have any way of legislating at the local level? And so we do. And the answer is yes, we do have some flexibility in crafting the implementation in a way that's suitable for our community and fits our community. And so the staff is going to attempt to do that. And those discussions are going to be had in the future. And so you'll be able to come here and give feedback as to that long-term vision. But what we're told is it's going to take some time. It's not something that can be put together overnight. And so today, what we're looking at is an urgency ordinance, because when SB 9 passed, there is no such thing in our local ordinance. It's inconsistent with our local ordinances, right? So there's no standards, objective standards in place. So what we're looking at is essentially saying that the objective standards that apply in all of the other zones are going to apply with respect to lot splits. And we're going to do that vis-a-vis an urgency ordinance, saying it's an urgent matter. We're going to put it in place now. So there are going to be standards. They're going to be the standards that exist now. I know that you probably don't think that's enough, and I think that there's a lot of people that don't think that's enough. And so we're going to come back at it in terms of the long-term vision of what those standards are going to look like in the future. And I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation. Hopefully we'll get it done as soon as possible, and that we don't have an urgency ordinance in place for too long. And so I do support this urgency ordinance because it puts standards in place when there are no standards, and it's a temporary fix, and the long-term fix is going to be something that we develop together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lyons.
I agree with the comments on the value of open space to our community, and many people have made them. And so I appreciate those comments and welcome them. And we are interested in advancing the value and the appreciation and the regulation associated with open space. So I'll just make that comment as far as my own interest. And I think it's complementary to to the discussion on SB 9. I get your connection with it. It's because we value these open spaces in our community. And we wish that when we're forced to conform with a requirement that's brought down from the state, we're just trying to manage it the best we can right now. And perhaps there's nothing we can do right now in this language associated with open space, but it's still on our radar. So I just wanted to say that. I think that this is one step in the process. This is time sensitive. We want to put this in place tonight. We want to be able to manage what might come to us starting January 1st. So I think this is a really good positive step forward, but there's many other complementary steps that need to come right after, and we're aware of that, and we'll be working towards that. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Councilmember Hinsey.
Thank you. So yes, I have to echo my colleagues' comments that Jennifer, you're a very poetic and persuasive writer, and I'm thankful for both of you for your high level of engagement and making sure that your values for our city are articulated. And I support Councilmember Lyons and our efforts to protect mature trees and increase our open space and really save things in perpetuity for the generations that follow. So my questions for staff are related to the affidavit and so the concern I have, which I think a lot of other folks have, is that the value of land's going to go up under SB 9. It will attract investment, and to circumvent that that byproduct, the owner has to sign an affidavit that they will be a resident of one of those units. So if one of our residents suspect that that's being conned somehow, that it's not actually a permanent resident there, that person might have that listed as their primary residence but be living elsewhere, what's the protocol to report that? Would they have to go through code enforcement? Would our city staff be helpful in showing them how to locate assessors' records or things like that? So the question is, how do we plan to stay on top of that and make sure that a lot of these properties don't turn into investor-owned properties?
So the affidavit only applies to the urban lot split component. So the owner occupancy requirement and signing that affidavit would be part of that record. And so we would be able to see and who applied and who was the owner on record that they would be saying. We have just, it's not a deed restriction though, it's just an affidavit saying that they're going to do this for 3 years. It is in the code, so it would be a code enforcement to then enforce that. And so that process would then be through code enforcement to check and find out what's going on with that site.
So a neighbor would have to go public with their name and, say that they're the one that reported them and then go through the due diligence to have our staff check to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kranz.
Specifically to that point, I've heard a number of scenarios where that whole thing can be gamed pretty effectively. So unfortunately, I don't know that particular requirement is going to keep any dedicated investor from finding a way into the bonanza that's likely from this, unfortunately. And yes, Jennifer is quite poetic. She happened to pick a quote of mine that wasn't very poetic, but nonetheless quite true. So I'll try harder next time so that if you are inclined to quote, it's something a little more smarter. The other thing that I wanted to get into a little bit, Deputy Mayor Musk was talking about the reason for the urgency ordinance, but I think the other thing is that we skip first and second reading, we skip public notice, we skip a lot of things by adopting an urgency ordinance. Isn't that correct?
Well, you don't skip public notice because this has been noticed for the
Oh, it has
urgency.
been noticed,
Oh,
okay.
yes, this is noticed under the agenda for today like everything else is. But yes, you don't have the second reading and it becomes effective immediately with the 4 votes.
And, you know, the requirement for the supermajority, and so this is all spelled out in state law, which allows us to take this action.
Yes, under your ability to make a factual finding of health, safety, and welfare, which has been articulated in the ordinance.
Okay, very good. So it's not like we're urgently trying to have people take advantage of SB 9. It's about protecting our community to the best of our ability in the circumstances of this particular law. So is this law similar to what they passed in or are working on in Solana Beach? Do you know?
As it relates to SB 9 and their implementation, it does not. Unfortunately, or I need to stop saying unfortunately. The City of Solana Beach ordinance has a limitation on the size of the unit. I believe they have an 825 square foot limitation on the size of the units. So, and there are other distinctions as it relates to ADU. I believe they don't allow ADUs, or they do, but it's with a restriction or an incentive. So we can look further into that, but that's the primary difference is they place a maximum unit size.
And is there a reason we didn't want to limit the size in that way?
So that's part of our approach, given that we don't have our approach is to just implement SB 9 the way it's written, and then provide clarification on definitions and some of the areas in SB 9 that is in a gray area. And then part of the long-term ordinance that will go through the process, we'll look into whether or not is that something that the City Council and the community and the Planning Commission want to explore to either to limit the size or use some sort of a standard to establish a unit size.
Okay, thanks. Do we need to have 2 motions, or can we do this in one? I guess one doesn't require a supermajority and the other one does.
Correct. If you're all in alignment and you want to take the whole thing at one time so we know that the 4 votes have happened, then that would be fine to take together.
Well,
Just move it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move it together and we need to read it all, or can we just, I move staff recommendation.
And let me just ask one question. So I had been looking at what some other cities' emergency ordinances were, and the City of San Jose city attorney says that the city, this is basically a document that was produced for the city, and it says that the city cannot adopt standards such as greater setbacks, a lower height limit, lower floor area ratio, or greater open space requirements for units built under SB 9 than apply to single-family residences constructed within the same zoning district. So that seems to all be, I just wanted to confirm, I mean, we're saying that all the same things that we currently have, we're not trying to change anything related to setbacks, height, any of that, right?
That's correct.
Okay, just confirming that, okay. Thank you.
There was also a discussion at one of the last meetings that for instance, that we would look at FAR as a way of kind of regulating this in the future. But FAR doesn't exist in some of our zones. And so it's something that we would have to go through a change. And it's something that should entail much more discussion. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Well, let's go ahead and vote on this then.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. So now let's go to thank you very much, staff, for those 2 items. Let's go to streetscape. That was the end of our action items, and now we're on to our informational item, streetscape and El Portal.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm here to give a brief update on our El Portal project and then updates on our 3 active streetscape projects. So this is the agenda for the night. Brief update on El Portal, then an update on the Leucadia Streetscape project we've got currently under construction, the Safety and Mobility Striping project, and then the West Side Focus Streetscape project at the north end of the corridor. So this is our El Portal undercrossing graphic. You can see the, could we get some IT help to make sure? There we go, thank you. You can see the project area along the rail corridor between Vulcan and the 101, right next to Paul Ecke Central Elementary School, and a couple photos of the recent construction. So that top photo shows them pouring the cap on the retaining walls, and that's on the east side. On the west side, they've formed up the stairs and the walls going down to the undercrossing and finishing up some of the walls there. So as they work to complete that project, that's going to be the main focus, is finishing up those walls, getting the sidewalks in, completing the drainage. And we're still anticipating a spring 2022 completion. So for the Leucadia Streetscape projects, of course, that 101 corridor has been split into 3 pieces. There's segment A at the south end between A Street and Basil, segment B from Basil to Jupiter, segment C from Jupiter to La Costa. And this is your mobility enhancement project that focuses on roundabouts, dedicated bike lanes, additional parking, wider sidewalks, walking paths, and trees. So the phase 1 construction project is well underway. We're more than halfway through with that project. It extends from Marchetta to Basil Street. It includes the same dedicated bike lanes, the striping, the lane diet, median improvements, more parking, walkways, sidewalks, lighting, roundabout. So here's some recent pictures from the area. In the area beforehand, we had striped medians. We've moved on to some improved medians with raised concrete separators and trees. So in the ultimate configuration, we'll have about 60 trees in the median there. Right now, we've got about 40 some odd, almost 50 trees out there currently. We've added new pavement along the corridor. Just this week, we were paving the northbound lanes to cover up the storm drain, where we completed the storm drain connection work. And we added some new pavement on the southbound lanes as well. And we've had some new pavement on the northbound lanes. There will be more to come, and next week our plan, weather permitting, is we'll do some striping of the new pavement on Sunday night. The most challenging part of it is working on the west side in front of the businesses. So we've removed the old curb and gutter in front of the entire corridor, all the way from Marchetta to Basil, and we've constructed new curb and gutter in the southern portion between Marchetta and El Portal. So that top right picture is some of the curb and gutter. The bottom left picture is the bus pad near El Portal.
Can I ask you a question about that bottom left picture there? That's a nice cement pad for our bus turnout, right?
Correct.
So is there going to be a shelter installed at that stop, or is it bench only, or what is the plan?
So on the west side, we have a lot of trees, and we're incorporating street furniture that's being constructed from the trees that were taken down in the area. So that will be the street furniture that will support the bus stop here. We'll have some nice benches and seating areas. On the east side, we're still exploring ways to bring in a bus shelter. We don't have the ridership to support NCTD funding a bus shelter on the east side. But we're looking for a way to incorporate that into the project.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important conversation that we need to have during budget time, because I think it's important that these improvements are made for public transit within this corridor. I know some of the stops in this corridor have been featured on the Insta site that shames public, local jurisdictions and public transit agencies for having some of the worst bus stops, and I've always anticipated Streetscape addressing that. So my hope is that instead of counting on NCTD because of the current ridership numbers, I think that the City Council needs to be presented with some options for addressing the public transit furniture. So to clarify, the space between that existing curb and the existing sidewalk, will that be more concrete for transit riders to be able to get on the bus?
There will be. So we're taking out kind of that planter area and the old sidewalk, and we'll be putting in new wider sidewalks and then street furniture.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, I completely agree that we should put in a bench and a cover. And we should get that back at our CIP time because we're building this right this minute. This is the time to put this in. And so, yeah, it's embarrassing. And I remember when you were running for office, Tony, you said, I want our transit to have like a good place to sit. And this is why I want to be on NCTD. And now you've been on it for so many years, you get worn down. But it's like the city could take over the things that are happening in our city that are of like very incremental increased cost. And this would really serve our residents. So we should definitely provide shelter.
Are you pointing out what a failure I've been? Is that what I heard?
No, I'm connecting you to your roots, that you wanted this and you still want it, and I'm seconding your commitment.
And I'll be the third, because I think that to the extent that NCTD doesn't see a value, we see a value, and I think that we should prioritize not just this route, but all of the heavy routes in our city, like El Camino Real. Now that we got a specific plan, we're putting some money in the paving, colorization, Z crossing. We should be also prioritizing those roads for not just kind of, ECR doesn't even have furniture in some instances, and so we should prioritize those roads for more than just kind of random furniture, but something that gives people shelter as well.
And I have to follow up. Kelly and I have started a conversation about issues related to bus stops, and we'll continue that hopefully in preparation for future meetings on this subject. I will say that NCTD is always interested in improving the lot of public transit riders. The question always boils down to the resources. And so the limited resources that all public transit agencies have generally are focused on those areas where the ridership, would suggest that it was a worthwhile investment in terms of the limited resources. So if you gave them, a few $100 million, they'd be happy to put bus stops and shelters in and benches and stuff. So it isn't their fault. And, we've had conversations as a council in the past, and it just was, in terms of the priorities, it unfortunately, we didn't get these things addressed.
But this is a multifunctional spot. I mean, people who are doing the Taste of Leucadia or walking on a walk can stop and sit at the bench. So, and I mean, I've sat at benches that are covered at bus stops, just walking down the street with my luggage or something. I mean, it's really, we should definitely do this. And I know it costs money, and I know you guys hear us say we want to do this and this and this all the time, but it should definitely be one of our budget packages that allows us to put this kind of furniture on streetscape and El Camino Real when we're doing construction, because really, I think it's just like critically important.
And I have reached out to the contractor and asked him for a price, so we've started that process to understand what the impact would be and make sure we have enough contingency in the project to support that if we move forward.
And we have also asked NCTD to partner with us to seek out grants. They are supportive of partnering in those applications and providing the resources to justify and support that. And then you partner that with our B-Cycle program. It allows people to come to our city and get around without having to ever ride a car.
I would also add that frequently surface mounting these kind of facilities works okay too. You may recall, maybe you didn't notice, but when we were at Leucadia Oaks Park for the train horn test, that is a park that has a bus shelter that was permanently placed there. And then 2008 hit and public transit took a wham, and that bus line that used to run on the Vulcan, gone. Now, it'll always be on the 101, so I think any investment we make here is going to be used.
Next update is lighting. So we've got the first street lights out there as part of the project, and we've got a video showing the initial night where they were lit. Oh, let me see if I can. This is supposed to be a video. Well, there's a video. We can send it to you later if you'd like to see the first night. It was December 2nd. It was very exciting for us. So project timelines, we're working on construction on our phase 1 project in segment A, looking to wrap up construction in late spring 2022. We've got our North Coast Highway 101 safety and mobility striping project between Basil and La Costa, We're wrapping up design on that one and expect to bring it forward to council in January, out to construction in late spring. We're looking to time it so that we're staying out of each project's way, so we'll wrap up the phase 1 before we start the next mobility and striping project. And then the segment C streetscape project, we're in the heat of design on that one, expecting our 90% submittal later this month. And we would expect to start construction on that one early 2023. And then that bottom line there is for our iBank loan to fund the Streetscape Segment C project. We're looking to apply for that loan likely in January. So we'll have a little bit more detail on the 2 upcoming projects. So of course the segments B and C safety and mobility striping project extends from Basil to Bishopsgate. It's going to incorporate the lane diet and the dedicated bike lane, and some minor median modifications to try and squeeze in as much as we can around the Leucadia Boulevard intersection. So the updates for this one are, we don't need a CDP out there. Our coastal development permit that we did for the overall project is sufficient. Our CEQA is complete. There's no new environmental impacts with this project. We did share the concept with Encinitas Bike Walk and San Diego Bicycle Coalition. We've got the 100% draft plans for this under review, and as I mentioned, we're planning to bring them to council in January. And we've evaluated some of the median trees out there, and we found that a couple of them are not in great health. So it's good we looked at them, and they will be going away. Not as required by this project, but just because they're unhealthy, large trees that aren't stable where they are. So here's our project timeline. So 100% plan review, we're expecting that we have that package in now and we're reviewing it. We're getting our comments back this week from all of our reviewers. We'll look to bring this to City Council in January for approval. We'll send it out to bid, and then we'll bring it back likely in March for award of a construction contract, and then start construction likely in May. So the big next streetscape project is our Segment C West Side Focus project that extends from Jupiter to Moorgate. It'll have the 3 roundabouts, dedicated bike lanes, restriping, some modest median improvements, sidewalks on the west side, and restriping on the east side, but not new pavement on the east side. So the updates on that is...
Wait, I'm sorry. I thought I wasn't clear on, we've moved on to the next segment. Can I just make a couple of questions on that B segment quickly?
For sure.
So you said you took it to Bike Walk and Bicycle Coalition, which is great. Can we also take it to our city's Mobility and Traffic Commission? Because, yeah, I think that's important to do and get feedback from them. And then these trees that are unhealthy, what type are they?
I believe they are eucalyptus trees.
Okay. It's really a bummer to lose our old eucalyptus trees.
It
so
is.
How many trees are you talking about?
2.
And have we taken this to UFAC?
We're planning to take it in January to UFAC.
Okay. I just, in general, don't want to lose our eucalyptus.
Do you know what cross streets those are between?
I can forward that information to you after the meeting or tomorrow. I don't have that handy.
Can I, excuse me, can I assume there was an arborist or a specialist involved in that determination?
Yeah, the city arborist went out there. They actually hired a second arborist company to go out there and review the trees that were in our project area and assess them, and that was the recommendation that came back.
I know some of those eucalyptus can be shorter lived, and it's all mature trees are good, but sometimes when you're adding new pedestrian facilities near the trees, I understand how that might happen where you'd need to remove them.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We can go to C,
All right.
section
I
C.
think Councilmember Lyons would be great to help us with the tree messaging.
I could be a tree whisperer.
Excellent. So on our Segment C project, we've closed escrow on 2 easement acquisitions. We're meeting with our 2 remaining parcel owners that require easements. The 60% design submittal has been routed, and we're expecting the 90%, like I said, a little later this month. And then as for timeline, we've submitted our CDP application. We need to do a substantial conformance, similar to what we did for our Phase 1 project. So we're submitting that. We expect that we'll have our 100% plan review in April of next year. We'll present to City Council in June of 2022. We'll head out to bid, and then we'll bring it back in August 2022 to award a construction contract. And then we have to work with our selected contractor to put together the additional documents that the Coastal Commission and NCTD requires before we can start the project. So we expect to cross all those hurdles probably around the end of next year. So we'd be able to do groundbreaking in January of 2023. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you. I do have one question/comment. So I continue to feel that we're better off with protected bike lanes as the top thing, striped bike lanes as the next thing, and sharrows as the thing underneath that. So I know that there's been some lack of clarity really about how much of this is going to be bike lane and how much is sharrow, and I just wanted to reiterate my hope that we can have as much bike lane as possible, not sharrow. So how's that going?
That's the plan that we have right now. It includes no sharrows. It is a bike lane through the entire corridor. It gets real narrow around the Leucadia Boulevard intersection, and we certainly we have a design that is not pleasing all of the cyclists through the area. We've heard some feedback, and what we're going to do is create green bike lanes throughout instead of just the green at the conflict zones like we've done in some places. We feel like that will show a better contrast between the parking area and the bike lane. But that is our plan for now, is to have bike lanes through the entire project.
Excellent.
limits.
I support that much better than sharrows. So I'm really thrilled to hear that update. Let me see if my colleagues have questions. Councilmember Hinsey.
Yeah, so my question was along the same lines. Leucadia Boulevard is the tightest point there to be able to fit in everything that we're required to. And I understand that we took the plans to bike walk Encinitas, and they actually preferred a sharrow there because they didn't want a bike lane in the door zone buffer. So it kind of hurts my heart to suggest this, but is there a way that we could shave that nice wide sidewalk down a couple feet so that we can move the parking over and actually create a door zone buffer so that we can please all parties?
We can take a look at it. I mean, at this point, it would be a redesign, and we're expecting our design submittal in a couple of weeks. So that would set our schedule back, and we'd have to fund
we
the
don't want to
redesign.
do that. Okay. So my other question, you answered the question. So the trees that were just recently put out there, some of those don't look all that healthy either. Are they alive still?
Some of them are deciduous, and they're dormant through the summer months. So we certainly get a plant establishment period for those plants, and we have warranties. So if any of them are dead, then they will be replaced by the contractor.
Okay, that's great. And then I'm curious to know on this last storm, so it sounds like the storm drain is in and that it was just needed to be capped with pavement. How did it fare? I noticed that my neighborhood had a lot less flooding than usual. So did it stand up well?
It did its job. The El Portal undercrossing is not really connected to it yet, so there's still some work to do on the drainage on El Portal. We definitely had significant flooding on Vulcan. We had significant flooding by Paul Ecke Central, by Jason Street, along the 101 corridor. But the little bit of drainage that's already connected to it seemed to function fine.
Okay, so we expect that to improve once it's fully connected?
We do.
Okay, good. Yes, I also support the bus shelters on the east side and creating a way for us to be able to pay for those. And I'm sure you don't have the answer off the top of your head right now, but perhaps it's something that you can look into, in that I know we salvage a lot of the trees we have to take down, and then we repurpose them into street furniture. So I hope that's the option that we go with. And then when Tony and I did have this discussion earlier this week, he mentioned that some cities might do like a, what did you call it? A sponsored booth?
Oh, no, that was my idea. That never came to fruition. It was called
Adopt a Stop?
Adopt a Stop, yeah.
So yeah, the Adopt a spot, I really like that idea. And if we could incorporate some way that at those stops, we have a sponsor there who's taken some ownership over it and gets to promote their, whatever it is that they're selling, but that also we communicate about B-Cycle, because I think our hope is that we'll see transit ridership go up once we have B-Cycle up and running in the city. So maybe that's something that we can look into, like provide a menu for some of our bigger businesses to see if they might be interested in sponsoring some improvements to those stops. And then am I crazy because are we ahead of schedule on both of these projects? Because didn't we just have our halfway ribbon cutting and it was this fall and now here we are going to be complete in spring?
Things are moving along. Certainly the west side is more complicated on the streetscape project. Every time you dig up old sidewalk, we're always surprised by the utilities that we didn't expect to see there, even though we had utility markouts. So we've hit a couple laterals that weren't where they were supposed to be, and we've hit some challenges. So I'm not going to say we're free and clear, but we're certainly still on schedule.
That's great. Okay. Well, I think those are all my comments, and thank you for all the progress. And now we're talking about 3 streetscapes.
Councilmember Kranz.
Yeah, and I've been still geeking out on all the construction. It's really amazing to watch, and I have positive feelings for the Granite construction team. They seem to be plugging away there. Yes, the new facility for stormwater, the confluence of the old pipe with the new pipe at Union, that was a pool. That was just, and that's because there was a heck of a lot of water flowing northbound in the open culvert, hit that big new pipe, and yeah, it was a deluge. Now, I don't know if we've made any calculations about what year storm that was, whether it was 718 or 540 or, but it seemed like there was a lot of rain that came down in a short period of time. So definitely a test for the system. The west side system seemed pretty dry though. It was kind of interesting. We're doing paving now, and they're paving in the parking areas with the new curbs on the south side of El Portal. Do you anticipate painting, striping, and making that section usable prior to the roundabout being open? We're currently swerving people into a very narrow area, so I'm assuming that we're going to move some cones at least to get some more of that south part of 101 back to working.
We will get a little bit more open once we stripe, but we won't be able to open those areas for parking yet because that's where our pedestrians will be when we remove the sidewalk in front of the businesses. So we have to remove that old sidewalk that's right in front of the businesses, pour back the new stuff, then we get the pedestrians on there, and then we can really open up the area.
And I'm very excited to see that we're irrigating this new urban forest that we're creating in this section and the foliage that we're going to add. And I certainly wish we were doing more to harvest stormwater, but in this city, in this climate, it's not really, you can't necessarily rely on that. So the purple piping and the drip irrigation and so much of the other stuff that's going in is just really great to see. My hope is that we do the segment C in a way, I think that was one of the value budgeting things that may have gone away was that irrigation. And at the very least, I hope we plumb to the point where we can, we're able to come back later without a whole bunch of effort and actually do the plumbing of some of these areas that we may not be doing. And I don't know if we can do the bidding in a way that gives us the additive alternative to actually finish the irrigation on the north end as well, because that's, I think, going to be the key to reestablishing the canopy that everybody really is really longing to get back to. So very exciting. The team has done a great job. I appreciate all the work that you've put into this. It has some tweaks that I think you guys are all looking at, and that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's great to have these updates, especially on a night when we have the capacity and it's not so late. So I'm really grateful to have them, and let's continue them because it's great. This is really great work we're doing in the city, and council needs to be able to see it, and so does the public. So this is just excellent. Thank you for all your hard work. Yeah.
I'd like to correct it. At my age, after 8 o'clock is late.
I agree with you, but at least it's not 11. We did bump this before. I forget what agenda it was on, but okay, well, great. Thank you so much for that. So let's see. I don't think we have any other council member reports. AB 1234. Anybody want to make a report? Tony Kranz at the end? Yes.
I do not, but I think that you are going to report something, are you not?
On which board?
I think it would be our regional transportation plan.
Oh, yes. At Sandag, we passed one. Yes, we've been working on this since we hired Hassan, which was, approximately 3 years ago. And it's green and ambitious and invests in transit and reimagines how you get around the county. And it's really exciting. Because when I was first on the Sandag board, I had to go out and do the road show for Sandag's old plan. And there was such a collective lack of enthusiasm. It was like, what? Like, you look forward to 2050 and it's exactly the same and nothing's improved and we're not thinking bold about anything. It's like, well, the politics of the board, whatever. So now things have really changed and it's really exciting. It's obviously extremely divisive still, but that hasn't changed since it first came out. But I'm really hopeful that it will actually provide better transportation options for people and reduce emissions. Yeah.
And we have some challenging votes to take ahead for the public to fund the thing, right? So nothing's been decided about when those measures will be on the ballot.
Right. I mean, the Sandag isn't putting anything on the ballot. There'll be citizen initiatives. And by law, the Sandag can't be involved. So that's all happening in some other world that I'm not involved in. But it is true that in order to fund transportation improvements, we do have to go to the voters to get funding. So there will be another sales tax measure that the plan relies upon as a revenue stream.
And I don't know when the time would be right, but I think that it would be helpful to understand, while you can't be engaged because you represent us at Sandag,
right.
Is it possible for council members to engage on this particular issue without getting in legal trouble?
That's a great question. I don't know if our attorney knows, but.
Yes, you can. You could just are not able to spend city money, but you can do everything on your own time. You don't give up those rights.
Okay, thank you.
And we could have a little report here at our city. There are places like Del Mar that get reports frequently because the bluffs and the train tracks are in their city. But so we could do that if there was interest in hearing about it. Yes. Okay, well, thank you for prompting that. Any other AB 1234 reports anyone wants to share? Okay. Anybody else? City attorney, city manager, city clerk report?
No, just happy holidays and see you in
Yes.
2022, which I can't believe we say stuff like that.
I know. Happy holidays,
Happy
everybody. We'll
holidays.
see you in 2022. We're
See you in a
adjourned.
month.